Hey everyone, welcome back to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, we have a bow hunter from the state of Michigan who has had some Sasquatch encounters while hunting in the forest. I find these types of stories to be the most interesting and informative when trying to understand the Bigfoot's behavior. Hunters are very aware of their surroundings and are always keeping an eye out for any subtle movement. Experienced hunters understand how to track animals and always try to keep the wind in their favor. Trying to locate a mature animal that has outlived many hunting seasons can be a daunting task, but with the right knowledge and patience, a person could have a few encounters or even have one walk right underneath their stand. But what happened to Scott on this particular bow season day was something much more rare than encountering a whitetail buck. While entering the forest one morning to bow hunt, Scott soon found out that he himself was being stalked and possibly hunted by some type of unknown predator. You will often hear hunters scoff at the idea of Bigfoot existing in the forest, but you will also get feedback like, "I have hunted everywhere and never seen anything." But one would have to be extremely naive to believe that a single person has been everywhere in one lifetime. I believe that even if you live next to these creatures, the odds of you seeing one is still very low. Many Bigfoot stories have been told by hunters all over North America. A good portion of Sasquatch sightings have been reported by outdoor enthusiasts. This includes hunters, the Forest Service, and many others who utilize the forest. If you were an outdoorsman, I would highly recommend listening to this interview, as these types of situations could easily happen to you out in the brush. It's just good to be aware, just in case it happens to you. If you enjoy this type of content, please be sure to like and subscribe. You can also support Sasquatch Theory by donating to the channel in the link below, or by purchasing some merchandise. I highly appreciate everyone's support, and it certainly helps the channel grow. Alright everyone, let's dive into Scott's encounters from the state of Michigan. Welcome to Sasquatch Theory, Scott. I appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thanks a lot for letting me come on your show and tell a couple of my experiences and some stuff that's going on in my life since 2000, when this all started and opened the whole world of Sasquatch for me.
Okay, yeah, great. Glad to have you on. If you would, just start from the beginning when it all started and tell us all how it happened.
Well, this all started, it was sometime in November, like middle of November. The rut was on, and I had been in the woods for quite a long time at this point. And I mainly hunt deer. That's all I care about. I look forward to it every year. I get together with my buddies from Ohio, and you have a lot of camaraderie when you get together with people and hunt, and you all want to get deer, and when somebody gets deer, everybody's excited. So I've been hunting a long time, never having Sasquatch on my mind, but I had hunted in Ohio, here in Indiana, in Michigan where I lived. The funny thing of it is, when you don't have Bigfoot on the brain, and you see stuff, for me, it just never really connected with Sasquatch or Bigfoot. It never landed in my mind when I saw a tree break, and I've seen a lot of tree breaks, over the years, 8, 9 feet up, and the top core of the tree is broke over, and it's just hanging in one direction or the other, usually along a trail or a game trail. And like I told you on the phone, I've seen a lot of them. I've seen some of them that are twisted, and like I told you, you got to have hands to do that. No wind or storm is going to take a tree and break the top part of it. If you have a big tree, all the weak limbs are going to fall out of the tree. They can't handle the wind. But a 6, 7, 8-inch tree around, a sapling tree or 8-inch tree growing that's pretty healthy, it's going to pretty much withstand a windstorm of any kind. It's
if you could just kind of pretend like we never talked, and like if you already told me something, go ahead and tell it again so that way
okay.
the audience will know.
Okay. Um, so I would see these tree breaks over my hunting career. I mean, this year will be 31 years that I've been in the woods.
Mm.
Um, and, I was just going out to hunt, big bucks. I love killing big bucks. I'm a meat eater. Um, and I've been doing this a long time. So I went over to the landowner's place, and it was in a town called Mayville, Michigan. And I lived in Frankenmuth, Michigan. So, as the crow flies, as they say, from point A to point B, it was about an hour and probably 45 minutes for me to get over there. So, if I wanted to get out in the morning and beat the sun coming up, I had to get up pretty early. So, I drove over there. Um, I need to say before I start this, um, there was no moon phase. So there was no moon. The moon phase had went out and it was dark. And I mean, when I say dark, I mean when it's that dark, you can't see the hand in front of your face. So it was pitch black out. So when I got to the landowner's house, I got out of my car and my all my gear was on the other side of the car. And I got out and I walked around my car and I just noticed that, geez, it's like really, really quiet. Like there's no movement of anything. There's no sound. I mean, it was so quiet I could hear ringing in my ears. It was like really eerie. And I've hunted days, mornings when it's been pretty quiet and everything, but there's usually squirrels moving in the woods or whatever. But there was I couldn't hear anything. So I got my gear out, and I mean, you could hear a needle drop. And I got my gear out, put my gear on, got my bow and everything, and I started down the two track. Now the two track went about 45, 50 feet behind the landowner's house. So his house was up pretty high. It's like a hill, and then it went down into the woods or forest, whatever you want to call it. I hunted about 250 acres, but altogether it was 6 to 7,000 acres. So it was pretty huge, and I had been around a lot in there, so I knew a lot of areas. So I started down the two track, and the two track bent to the right, and then gradually went into the woods. And I turned right, and I was walking south, and then the two track turned to the left, and it ran probably, I don't know, probably 2.5, 3, 4 miles. You could drive a four-wheeler back in there if you wanted to, and it went east. So I had to take a left. And then I walked another probably, I don't know, 7, 8 steps, and there was a game trail that dumped into it. And I turned right because I had to walk down that game trail about 200, 250 yards back in the woods where my stand was. And I hunted a bull. If you could picture a bull sitting on the ground, I had 25-foot ridges all around me, and my tree stand was about 20 feet up. So I could see just to the top of the ridge all around me. And then it kind of broke down to about, I don't know, 5, 6 feet. So I would initially, when I got down to the end of that trail and got up over that ridge, I had to go up about 5 or 6 feet to get down into where my stand was. And then from behind me, from the 25-foot ridge, it would slope down past me into um, a swamp. It was a swampy area full of water. So when I turned right and started down that game trail, I was walking south. And I got down there I probably took 17, 18, 19 steps. I don't remember exactly, but it was pretty close to that. And I stepped on a branch and it cracked. And when I stepped on that branch and it cracked, something, I mean, huge got up it was about 35, 40 yards away from me. It got up. And when I mean it got up, I mean, it violently got up. Like it made all kinds of noise getting up. And I thought to myself, I froze. I took a step. When I broke that branch, I took another step, and that thing got up and I was bent over. And I remember my mind was telling my body, Scott, straighten up, straighten up. And I couldn't straighten up. I was just stuck there. And this thing got up and it made, there was leaves all over the floor of the forest, and I mean, it made so much noise getting up. So I'm thinking, what the heck is this? Because it sounds huge. Then I'm in pitch black now. Um, I forgot one note. I always go in the woods with a small flashlight on my thigh, and I roll that flashlight left or right when I'm walking. I can just see around my feet, so I don't trip on something and fall on my face. So I had that flashlight on my thigh, and this thing got up, and then I hear it take 5 steps in behind me on that 2 track. So it half circled me, went right in behind me on that 2 track, and walked just like me. And I'm thinking to myself in the moment, I'm still bent over. I can't straighten up. And I'm thinking, you know, what in the heck is this? Because this thing's walking like me. And I hate to call it a thing, but this creature, whatever it is, took 5 steps behind me and was standing on the 2 track. And I took that flashlight. I'm like, I got to shine it to my right. So I shined it over to my right, and it's pretty bright in the woods in the dark, and I saw nothing. Well, I hurry up and put that flashlight back on my thigh real quick, and I'm thinking to myself, Scott, you're an idiot. That thing, whatever it is directly behind you on that 2 track. And now it knows exactly where you are. Because I knew outside of seeing the Patterson Gimlin film of Patty when I was 9 years old on In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, I didn't know hardly anything about Sasquatch. I was just a bow hunter. I'm a deer hunter. I love killing big bucks. Okay. So this wasn't in my mind. So it didn't click to me yet of what the heck was going on or what it was. I just knew that this thing was standing behind me. And I thought to myself, man, this thing could come down this trail, whatever it is, and it can get me. I don't know what it is, but I for a second there, I thought, man, this is it. I'm going to die right here in this woods in Michigan, and it's going to be it. This thing's going to come down and get me, and nobody's ever going to find me. I'm going to be gone. And I thought to myself, you know what? I got to start walking to my stand. I got to get to my stand. I still have 200 and some yards to get back to my stand, and I got to get to my stand and get up my tree. So I started walking. When I started walking, it started walking. And it was trying to be stealthy because it was walking when I was walking. So I'm sure it was thinking, well, maybe he can't hear me, or, I'll just walk when he walks. Well, years later, I hear all these people give their accounts and their experiences, and it's the same characteristic. This thing was following us. When we stopped, it stopped. When we started walking, it would start walking. So, I didn't know anything like that in 2000. So I took 4 steps. I stopped. It took one more step, and it stopped. Now I'm sitting there in the pitch black dark. I can't see nothing. I'm scared to death to pull that flashlight up because I don't know what the heck it is. So I started walking again. This time I took 5 steps. I stopped. It took one more step and stopped. And I would stand there for, God, it seemed like 5 minutes, but it was probably more like 60 seconds, maybe a minute. And I started walking again. I took 5 steps. I stopped. It took one more step. And the hair started to raise on my neck because now this thing's walking just like me. Okay. I don't have anything in there like that. And I know there's nobody in there because I've hunted all over in there. And if there was somebody camping in there or somebody living in there or just somebody hanging out, I would know it because I've been there quite a while. I know the landowner very well. And, there was nobody in there. So I decided, okay, I'm running the rest of the way to that ridge and up over that ridge to my stand, and I'm getting up in my tree. Years later, I find out they push trees over. I didn't know anything about that. But I wanted to get up in my tree. It was the only place I felt safe. So it was going east, okay? When it was walking and I was walking, I was going south. It was going east. It was going out away from me. So when I took off running, it took off running and started to parallel me. And when I heard the footfall and I heard the thumping noise of the footfall, and there's like 5 or 6 seconds intervals between each footstep. So I'm thinking in my head, man, this has got, this is taking big strides, whatever in the heck it is, but it's huge. And it's paralleling me as I'm running to my stand. It's now running south. And then all of a sudden I hear it get into the swamp and it starts peeling out east of me as I'm still going south. And I'm hearing all this splashing like a human running, but it's huge and thumping. Every time I heard a footfall, it's thumping. And people ask me, well, what'd the thumping sound like? Um, and I said, well, if you take like a tree and cut it in half, put an eyelet in the top, put a hook chain on it, pull it up about 20 feet in the air, and drop a tree that's pretty big. When it hits the ground, that's the noise it makes. It's like a big, huge thump. I didn't really feel it, but I could hear it. Like it was really loud. Like it was crashing through all kinds of brush and limbs and everything. And then I'm hearing this thumping. So I get down finally over the ridge and I get to my stand and I drop my flashlight a couple times. I'm nervous, I'm shaking, and it's going from a run to a walk now, and it's running or walking, I'm sorry, southeast of me. I'm hearing it out in the swamp. So I hook my bow on, I climb up my tree, I get my bow up, I throw it on my bow hanger, hook my safety harness in, and I sat down. And I had all this adrenaline dump in me that now my hands are shaking violently and I can't control them. It's almost like being out in the cold. I mean, you're a hunter. When you start getting a little hypothermia, your hands start to shake, and you're trying to, warm yourself up. But this was like so much adrenaline dumped on my body because I mean, this was above being scared. I mean, this is the first time I ever felt terror in my life. I mean, here I am in pitch black. I can't see nothing. This thing's walking like me. Um, then it starts running like me, and then I'm hearing these huge stride thumps. Um, so I'm sitting in my stand with my face in my hands, saying, "What in the heck is going on? Is this really happening to me? I mean, what is going on here? I can't believe this." Because I never encountered anything like this. All the years I've hunted, I've never ran into something like this. So then I hear it stop walking, and there's a pause. I don't hear nothing. And then all of a sudden, I start hearing these huge branches being ripped off a tree. And I'm talking about, I mean, it's so quiet that I'm hearing this popping and cracking, and it's like pop, crack, and twisting of branches one after another. And I'm thinking to myself, you got to have hands to do that. Like, there's nothing out here. Like, I'm the biggest predator. I mean, I'm 207 pounds. I'm 5'9". Okay. I don't have elk. I don't have grizzly bears where I was. I don't have bear at all, really. I don't have any kind of caribou or moose. I don't have anything from 600 to 1,000 pounds. And that's what this thing sounded like. And this thing is tearing branches off a tree. I mean, like it's going to tear the tree down. And I'm just sitting there in amazement listening to it. And then all of a sudden it just went dead quiet. And I heard a few more steps. It was probably about 75 to 100 yards away from me. I heard a few more steps in the swamp and then it was gone like that. Well, you're a bow hunter. I'm a bow hunter. You sit out to a certain time in the woods and then pretty much when the deer move or game move through, if it's something you don't want to shoot, I mean, you get down, you pack your stuff up and you go home and it's another day or you go back that evening or whatever. You know, I sit out there till 11:30. I couldn't get down out of my tree. I was scared to death. And that's not me. I mean, I've been scared in my life. I think everybody has, but I was scared to come down out of that tree. So finally, um, I got up enough bravery to climb down, get my bow down, climb down out of the tree. I got my stuff. I went up over the ridge. I went down that game trail to the 2-track, up to the landowner's house. I got in my car and left and went home. And I didn't go back. I didn't go back for quite a while. I mean, I was scared to death to go in the woods anywhere. And I sat at home for a few weeks and didn't hunt. And I was married at the time. And my ex-wife was like, how come you're not going hunting? And I'm like, oh, well, I can hunt behind the house if I want to. And I'm just taking a break on it. And, I can help you out at home and I'll be here more for you and the kids. So, this went on and this went on, this went on. And, I woke up one night about 2 o'clock in the morning. I went out in my living room and I was sitting down and I was thinking about things. And I thought to myself, I got to go back over there. I got to get back in the woods because if I don't, um, I'm going to sell everything and I'm never going to go back in the woods. And, like I said, you're a hunter, we have a passion for it. I mean, I look forward to it every year. And, it's like I need to get back in there. This is what I think it was. Um, I can't let this thing run me out of the woods. I've been doing this a long time. And I'm, yes, I was terrified, but it's like I gotta face this and get back in there or it's over for me. So I went back latter part of December, early January. I went back in there and I hunted for 3 more years in there. I hunted from 2000 to 2003, and over the course of the seasons, um, I would go in to hunt, and I never went in the dark. I never went out of the woods in the dark. I mean, I would go in at first light where I could kind of see, and I would come out before the sun went down because it totally spooked me and turned my whole world upside down. I mean, I could not wrap my mind around it running and the pause in the steps and the thumping I was hearing, and then hearing the tree branches being broke off a tree. I could not wrap my mind around that because there was nobody in there, and I don't have any animals big in there. I'm it. So I had to go back in there. So when I got in there and I started hunting again, I would get up in my tree, and at daybreak, I would hear clear out to the south of me. I would hear a knock, big, huge knock on the side of a tree. And then about 5, 6, 7 minutes later, north of me, I would hear another knock. And, I would only hear one knock, but this would go on for a little bit. And I heard whoops in the swamp. I would hear whoop, whoop, like that. And I'm trying to look in the swamp, and the swamp was, it was very thick. Like some parts of it, you had to crawl through to get through it. So it was very thick, so I couldn't see anything. Um, and then I would hear whistles over the ridge behind me, and I would hear, see if I can do it. I would hear this, but it didn't sound like a bird. It sounded like something trying to intimidate, um, sound like a bird. And it sounded big. And it would be loud enough to where I would get up, stand up in my stand, I would turn around and I would look past my tree, around my tree, because I can only see to the top of the ridge. I couldn't see down over the ridge. So I would hear it to the right of me, then I would hear it to the left of me. So one would go, and then over to the left of me, something else would go like that. So I'm thinking, okay, if this is Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, there's got to be more than one because this thing ain't running back and forth because I would hear it. So there's got to be more than one. The tree knocks, the whoops were, in the swamp, and I couldn't see it, but I would hear it in front of me, and then I would hear it to the right of me, but I wouldn't hear anything walking in the water. So it's like, okay, there's got to be more than one in here. So this went on, this went on. And the other characteristic is when they were there, or I would hear them, I would hear a whoop, or I'd hear a knock, or something would whistle over the ridge. In fact, I thought quite a few times of getting down and walking up the ridge and just looking over it, but then I got too leery of it, because I'd been scared of it. So it's like, okay, I'm not climbing down the tree. But um, the weird thing is this went on and went on, but when they were there and I would hear them, I saw no game. Like I saw no crow, no birds chirping. It was dead quiet. I saw no deer. um I didn't see any squirrel. There were turkeys all over the property. I mean, you would walk in the woods in the dark, and there'd be 2 or 3 turkeys roosted in a pine tree, and they'd take off flying. And they're loud when they take off and you know uh, go to fly. I mean, that'll make you jump in itself in the dark. And I had that a couple times happen to me, and my heart went in my throat. Um, but when they were there, I saw nothing. I mean, I saw nothing. And the weird thing is, in 2002, I had a 7 point come in. Didn't hear anything from them all day, nothing. I thought, well, maybe I'll see some deer. 7 point came into my bait pile. I shot it. It ran in the swamp. And I'm like thinking to myself, oh man, I got to go in that swamp and get that deer out. And, I was still leery of it. I was still scared. So I waited about, I don't know, 35 minutes. Usually you should wait about an hour or so, but I'm like, I hit that deer pretty good. I'm gonna go in and get him. So I went in, I crawled in some spots of water, found the deer. I didn't have anybody to help me drag it. I grabbed the deer, started dragging it. So I would take my bow up 20 yards, grab the deer, go, drag it up to my bow, take my bow through the swamp, you know what I mean, move it up and so forth. And I started hearing these whoops, and I would hear them to the right of me. And I'm looking, I'm trying to look through the brush to see. I couldn't see anything. Then I would hear it to the left of me. Then I would hear it to the right of me. Then I would hear it to the left of me, to the point where it freaked me out. I drug that deer as fast as I could to my tree, and I left it. I didn't field dress it. I just left it. I grabbed my bow and I got the hell out of there. I ran up over that ridge and I got out of there, out to my car, and I took off. And I'm thinking, well, that deer ain't going to be there tomorrow, because if they're there, they're going to take it. Because I've heard other hunters, tell about, how they shot a deer and they followed the blood trail. They went to get a knife or whatever from the car, come back, follow the blood trail. They find this huge puddle of blood where the deer died, and there's no deer, and there's drag marks, and the deer's gone. Well, that could be anything. Wherever you are, that could be a mountain lion. I'm not saying it's Sasquatch, but a lot of guys feel that it is. That's their thing. But I called my buddy, CJ. He's about 6'4", 6'5", weighs 300, I think 50 pounds at the time. He's a pretty big guy. And I told him, I said, hey man, I shot a 7 point. I said, I didn't tell him what was going on, but I said, I'm too tired to drag it out. And I just got home. Would you go with me tomorrow and help me drag it out? He had a nice big cargo van. We put plastic in it. We got over to the homeowners. We went down there, and the deer was still there. Not a mark on it. Nothing. No, it hadn't been moved. Nothing. So I told CJ, grab an antler, let's drag it down the trail, up over the ridge down the trail. I'm going to field dress it there. So when we got down there, I said to him, hey, I want you to just look around in, 180 degrees, 360 degrees, just kind of look around. And he's like, what? I'm like, just look around while I field dress this deer. And he's like, oh, okay. And so he's looking up and looking around, and I'm tearing into this deer. And I think it was the fastest field dressing I'd ever done on a deer. I mean, I was just ripping through it and getting the internals out of it. And then I said, okay, I'm done. Let's go. I left the guts and everything there, because I'm thinking, well, if I leave the guts and everything there, maybe they'll think I'm gifting, and they'll just leave me alone, and I won't hear anything else from them. So I'm going to leave the heart. Usually I take the heart. I might take the liver for friends that eat it, but I'm leaving the gut pile. I'm leaving everything here. And this is what I'm thinking in my mind. So CJ and I, we dragged that deer all the way up, down the trail, up the 2-track, got in his van and got down the road. And I'll tell you what, I never let out such a sigh of relief. I was like, oh man, I'm sweating and I'm shaking, and CJ is like, are you all right, man? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. It's just, it was really rough dragging that deer out, because that deer was probably about 180 pounds. It was a pretty young buck, but it was pretty big. So we got that out and everything. And then I'm hunting 2003. I don't really hear a lot of anything. It's like everything has dried up. And I'm like, have these things left, or, what the heck is going on? Because I'm not hearing anything. And it was in December. And I'm sitting there and it's starting to get dark. And I'm like, okay, this is my cue. I got to get down and get out of here because I know what it's like to be here in the dark and I want to get out. So I got all my gear and I started up over the ridge, down the trail. I probably walked, I don't know, 20 steps, and a stone hit me in the back. And I was like, what the heck? I took my flashlight and I looked down and the stone was right next to me. And I'm like, I'm trying to wrap my mind around this now again. Okay. A stone just hit me in my back. I turned around, I popped my flashlight on because it was just starting to get dark, but you could still kind of see. But a flashlight kind of helps illuminate stuff. And I'm looking, behind me, and there's nothing there. And there's a pine tree right next to me. And I heard that they've gotten up in trees before. And I'm thinking, man, I do not want to look up in this tree. I was scared to death to look up in it. But I'm like, you know what? I'm standing here. I've been hit by a stone, the moment of the truth. So I looked up, popped that flashlight, and I looked up there, nothing in the tree. So I'm like, that's weird. Like, how did I just get hit in the back with a stone and there's nothing there? So I'm like, screw it. I start walking down the trail. I walked another 15, 16, 17 steps. I get hit with another stone in the back. Now, almost in the same place. That was the freaky thing for me. It was almost in the exact same spot. And now I flip around and I got my flashlight on and I'm looking real slow everywhere. Now my heart's in my throat because something just threw a second stone at me. And I'm like, I can't see nothing in here. I don't hear any movement. I don't see it. I mean, I can't see anything. There's nothing there. And I'm like, how'd this stone fly and hit me? And there's nothing here throwing it. So I turned back around, I bent down and I picked that stone up and I have it today. If we were on a video thing here, I'd show you the stone, but I have it to this day. But I picked it up and put it in my hand. I walked down to the game trail and I said in my mind, okay, guys, this is it. I'm done. I'm not going to hunt here anymore. I'm not coming back. I'm not going to hunt here. You can have this whole woods. And I went up that 2-track, never even said boo to the landowner. I got in my car. I took off down the dirt road, got to the paved road, and I went home and I never went back there. That freaked me out. More than being in the dark and hearing the damn thing run. That really creeped me out because I can't explain what hit me with a rock. I didn't see anything there. And it hit me twice. And I have the stone to this day.
Yeah, that's
So
creepy.
yeah, that's really creepy, man. I've heard some creepy encounters from people and a lot of different podcasts because, after my second occurrence, I have really been digging deep into this and listening to other people's accounts. But the crazy thing was, from 2000 to 2003, I never told one person. And I know that there's people out there right now experiencing something either paralleling them in a wood somewhere, hikers or hunters. They can't see it. It's throwing rocks at them, all this stuff. And they'll never tell anybody because, we have these Slim Jim commercials with Sasquatch and messing with Sasquatch. And it's like a big joke. But, supposedly it doesn't exist, but yet we have commercials about it existing.
And all that's a classic Bigfoot phenomenon or behavior, I guess I should say.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like a big joke. I mean, when you're in the woods in the dark and there's no moon and you're hearing something walk behind you and it stops and it's just standing there and it can come get you anytime it wants, but it's not. And you're standing there, and it starts walking like me, you just, I can't make this, I guess I can't get the point across any more strongly than what I'm doing. It's fear. Like you cannot wrap your mind around what's going on. Because these things are supposedly not supposed to exist.
Mhm.
So when you run across one, I've never seen one. I've heard it, but I don't know if I really want to see one. I guess if I was driving down the highway at 75 mile an hour and one came up along the edge of the road as I'm going by and I saw it for 8 seconds, that would be good enough for me. I don't know if I'd really want to run into one, in the woods somewhere where it's just it and me. And I'm 2 miles away from where I have to get out. I don't know. I don't know if I've heard all kinds of accounts of people seeing them walk, 10 yards past them and they just look at you and just keep walking. And some people have gotten paralleled out and pushed out. Um, but I didn't tell anybody for 3 years. And I only told one person, and that was my soon to be ex wife. And we were at a child custody hearing, and I'd been carrying this for 3 years. And I just, I broke down and told her, I said, I've known you for 20 years of my life. I think I can trust you, and I need to tell you something. And I told her the whole thing, and she started laughing, um, until she seen I wasn't laughing, and she seen the look on my face. And then it went from a laugh to a smile to no smile. And she's like, "You're kidding me." And I said, "No, I'm not kidding you. And this has been on my mind. And this whole thing has turned my world upside down. It put so much fear and terror into me that I was thinking about selling all my stuff and never going in a woods ever again because I was that scared. Because I was in a pitch black area by myself with something that evidently is a lot bigger than me. And this thing, like I said, it sounded 600 to 1,000 pounds. It had to have been between 7 and 9 feet tall because I estimated, I know a couple people that are over 6 foot, they can't even take a 6 foot stride. They can't do a 6 foot stride. So this thing has to be over 6 feet, 7.5, 8 feet maybe, to do a 5.5, 6 foot stride because it's 5, 6 seconds between each footfall I heard. So I know it's taking big strides. So she's the only person I told. And then, you know, I I went probably 2012. I worked at a hospital. So it was about 2011 or 2012. I worked at this hospital in security, and I had a friend that worked there, and he was a Native American. And a lot of times we would work one weekend, have one weekend off, and on the weekends we worked together. We would talk about all kinds of things in the lot because usually Saturdays and Sundays was a slow time at the hospital. There wasn't a lot going on. It was a lot of dead time. So we would sit, jeep to jeep, window to window, talking about all kinds of things. And I said, "Hey," I said, "You're a Native American." I said, "Does your tribe believe in Sasquatch?" And he's like, "Yeah." Uh, my whole tribe believes in Sasquatch. Um, there's a whole history of Native Americans having affiliation with Sasquatch, working with them, the whole 9 yards. And I said, "Okay, well, I got a thing for you." Well, I told him the whole thing. I told him the whole thing that happened to me, but I didn't tell him it happened to me. The whole thing, the stone throwing and everything. And I said, "Yeah, the guy picked the stone up and took it with him." And he said, "Whoa, wait a minute." Dead in the tracks, he stopped. He said, "Wait a minute, back this bus up." He said, "The guy picked the rock up?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I think he has it today." And he said, "Oh man, you don't do that." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You don't touch anything they touch. Nothing." He said, "Because it how do you say it? Um, it contacts you supernaturally to them. And that guy is going to have another experience with them. They'll find him. This is what my tribe believes. I mean, you're supernaturally connected to them." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Oh, yeah." He's like, "That's what my tribe believes." And, what do I know? I'm not a Native American. I mean, that's what his tribe believes. That's what they believe. So I'm like, wow, that's crazy. He's like, "Yeah, you don't ever touch anything they touch. If you find a tree break, don't touch it. Don't touch any part of it. Don't lift it up. Don't look at it. Just don't touch it." I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right." And so after that, I got divorced. I left Michigan. I went and lived in Indianapolis for a little while. And I met my girlfriend and I moved up to the northwest corner of Indiana. And I started hunting her mom and dad's property. And I don't know, it's probably about 45, 50 acre woods, maybe a little bit bigger. And then it's surrounded by field. There's probably, I don't know how many acres of field. It's about 373 football fields and 3/4 across the field. It's pretty big property. And the first year I was going to hunt it, I always go and scout where I'm going to hunt. And I'm walking through this woods and I'm seeing tree break here, tree break over here, tree break over here. And I'm like, there's a lot of tree breaks in here. What the heck is going on? So I started hunting there. And it was in November 2015. And I was like, I can't remember the date. It was like the 12th or 13th, somewhere in there. And rut was on, and I saw some deer, but I didn't get a shot or anything. And the sun was starting to go down. You get that pink sky when the sun's just about down. And I'm like, I got to get out of the woods. So I get all my gear, climb down out of my stand, and there was a big bean field with soybean in this big field. And then I walked out facing south and turned right, and I was kind of like a quarter into the field away from the woods. And it's starting to get dark. So, if you're not a hunter, if you're in the woods, the light escapes. When starts to get dark, it gets really dark in the woods. You can step 10 feet outside the woods and you can still see yet because the sun isn't all the way down. But when you're in that woods, you can't see anything. So I go a quarter, half out into the field and I start walking towards the house. Mom, dad live at the end of the property. It's probably, I don't know, like 150, 175 yards from where I was to the house. And I'm walking down this field. And all of a sudden, caddy corner from me in the woods, I start hearing these footsteps. And they're big footsteps. Like, didn't sound like a deer or anything. I know what deer sound like. I know what coyotes sound like. I know what four-legged animals sound like. When deer take off running, they sound like a horse galloping. And they sound pretty heavy, but you can hear all four hoofs hitting. You know what I mean? But this sounded like a bipedal person walking towards me, but it sounded really big. And I'm like, oh no, man, not this again. And we're going to intersect. Okay. It's still in the woods, but it's coming right towards me as I'm walking towards the house, and we're going to intersect. And all of a sudden it stops. It stops walking in the woods and it's just standing there. And I can't see it. When you're outside and it's getting dark and you're trying to see something, like you're really trying to focus your eyes and see if you can make out anything in a woods when you're on the outside of it, because it's just getting dark and you're losing time and you can't see it. So I'm standing there and it's standing there in the dark and I can't see it. And I'm just like, do I keep walking or, I'm kind of waiting for something to walk out. And all of a sudden I hear this scream, and I mean, it screamed at me. And I went down to one knee. Okay. I didn't even think to do that. I just reflexed. I had my bow in front of me and I wanted to get down in the bean field as low as I could get because this thing was really loud. And it stopped screaming. And I'm over there looking, like, I'm thinking, what is this? Is this a Bigfoot in Indiana? I mean, come on, in Indiana? You know what I mean? So it lets out a yell a second time. And the second time it was even louder. And it was so loud that I had to cup my ears because it was that loud. I actually felt the sound on my right shoulder and my right chest bent down. And this thing, everybody's like, well, what does it sound like? Other people I talk to on podcasts are like, well, what's your best thing of it, what it sounded like? And I said, it sounded like an air raid siren. or it sounded like a tornado siren. If you're ever down at the park and you hear a tornado siren start up, it starts real low, like a guttural, like growl low, and it goes to a real high pitch scream. And that's what this thing did the second time, and I could feel it. And I'll tell you what, I was like one of those cartoons where your legs leave before your body. I was sprinting for my life. I mean, running through that bean field as fast as I could run without falling down. And I got to the backyard of her mom, dad's place. I threw my bow down on the ground. I was bent over, breathing so heavy, trying to catch my breath. And I'm like, okay, if this is what I think it is, I'm going to stand right here until I see it. And I stood there for 10 minutes and no sound. Nothing came out of the woods. No sound, no nothing. I mean, nothing. Not another footstep. And I could hear it walking plain as day towards me because there was all kinds of leaves, on the floor. And it's hard to get in the woods when you're trying to hunt and there's leaves all over the ground. You have to walk very slowly. And this thing is like chomp, 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 chomp. I could hear it coming, you know, clear back in the corner of the woods, over probably 75, 80 yards from me away. And I could hear it plain as day coming. That's how I knew it was big. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't a coyote because it just sounded too loud. Every footfall that came down. And I was like, I, I got my gear. I got in my car. And again, I backed out. I didn't even take my hunting clothes off. And I went home. And I told my girlfriend about 2 weeks later what happened. I never told her about Michigan until I told her about that. And it's like, I got to tell somebody, like, I can't hold this in, forever. So once again, I'm like, I got to go over there and hunt. The next year came. I quit hunting. I didn't hunt the rest of the year. I stayed home. And next year came and I went over there and scouted in the summer. And I found a pretty big tree break. It was a pretty big tree that had the limb snapped down and it was hanging. And, uh, I was like, well, it's either I get in here and hunt or I just stay home. So I hunted. And then I think it was last year. I went to check my trail cam and I have 3 big trees that have limbs and the limbs are real long and they hang down on the edge of the field because I hunt right on the edge of the field because the deer will skirt the woods every once in a while. So I put my stand over there. That's pretty much where it's been. And I have these trees with these limbs hanging over, and it's like I can't shoot any deer when they're coming through those 2 or 3 trees because the branches are hanging down in front of them. I can't get a shot. So I have to wait for them to get past that in the clearing. And I come out of the woods after checking my trail cam and I happened to look up and all those 3 big limbs were all tree breaks. And they're right in front of my stand. I mean, right in front of my stand. They're like spitting distance away, like maybe, you know, 10 or 12 feet away. And they're broke so bad that one limb, something had to have grabbed it and stripped the bark on the tree, pulled down on it, and stripped the bark on the tree, and it's hanging by the bark on the tree. And I'll have to go over there and see if I can take some pictures and send them to you, Miguel, because it's weird. I mean, weird how they're broke, and they're all. And I don't know if this thing is telling me to stay out of there because I broke it right in front of my stand. I don't know. So I'm interested, when I get over there this year, of what's going to go on because, deer season starts for me in a couple weeks, and I haven't even been over there this year. So I didn't even put a game trail out. But those trees were broke like that, and I can't wrap my mind around it because something has to have a hand, not only to break that limb, but pull down on it.
Right.
Yes, if you have a solid tree and you break at the top, the limb's just going to hang. But when you have a branch coming out off the tree and it's broke down and pulled, that's a different ball game. That's a drop the mic kind of moment. That's something grabbing it with his hand and yanking down on it. It's not the force of gravity, that limb getting broke with the wind and then the weight of the limb is just pulling the bark down. Something pulled down on that. So that was my experience that I had in 2015, and what I found in the woods. And then just this last June, I went out to Vegas with my girlfriend, out to Vegas area, Nevada, and she's a big gambler. I'm not. So I've been out there 3 years, and we try and do something different every time we go out there. So I was sitting there, and she said, "Come on, we're gonna go to Red Rock Canyon." And I'm like, "What's Red Rock Canyon?" She said, "Oh, it's just a little north west of Vegas." And she said, "It's this big canyon area, all these mountains and canyons." And she said they have wild horses running around out there, and mules and all kinds of stuff. And she said it's just really beautiful. So we went out there. We paid $20 to get in, and it's a 13-mile loop that you drive with your car, and they have all these stations that you can stop at. It's kind of like rest areas. So, you can get a water or a pop or, whatever, candy bar or whatever. And there are these big, deep canyons that you can walk down into, and you can hike around a little bit of it. So we went to the first one, and then we went to the third one. It had a lookout where you could look out. I took a lot of great pictures, and it was like 60 degrees 50 or 60 degrees the whole time we were there. I packed for 90 to 100-degree temperatures because that's what it usually is. So all I had was t-shirts and shorts. I about froze to death. But when we got out of our car, it was like a 25-mile-an-hour gust, okay, winds, just rapid wind, and it was really cold. And I'm like, wow, let's get back in the car, man. I took some pictures and like, I've had enough of this. So she's like, well, let's go over and check, this station out here. And we pulled in, and there was a little area where you could hike, and people were coming off of hiking it and back into the parking lot. And we're like, is this, really far? And they're like, no, it's just a little area to hike. And we're like, okay. So we walked back in there, and we're walking around, and to set this up, I'm the type of person when I go somewhere, I like to explore things, especially if I know that I may not be there again. I like to take it all in. And it's like, if I go to a new property that I'm going to hunt for next year or whatever, I scout the hell out of it out because that's how you're successful deer hunting. You know this. So we get out there and we start hiking back in there in the stone and everything. And they had a pyroglyph on the side of the mountain, and it was all kinds of these figurines and stuff. I didn't know what it was, and they had a little tiny thing that kind of talked about it, and they didn't really know if it was a tribe of Indians that came through that put it on there. Native Americans, they didn't know who it was. And then I started to hear voices, and I'm like, why am I hearing voices? Well, there was a woman holding a rope, and a guy was climbing the side of the cliff of the mountain, and he was up there pretty high. And I was like, wow, look, he's climbing up there. I thought it was really cool. So I'm like, you know what? I'm here. I'm going to go explore a little bit, and I'm going to walk down in this valley here. Remember, I said it's real windy. I'm going to walk down through this valley here, through this mesquite and cactus. I want to see if I can find a tarantula or a scorpion, or maybe I'll see a rattlesnake or whatever. I'll see some kind of animals or, whatever out here in the desert. So I just start walking north, and my girlfriend's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just took my hand and waved it like, just shut up. I'm going to walk through here zigzagging. And I walked probably, I don't know, I think 125 yards, something like that. I was pretty far away from where we were, off the beaten path there. And I come into this clearing, man. It's just like like kind of, there's not a lot of vegetation. It's just a clearing. It's just open. And it's kind of like a round area. And man, the wind just stopped. There's no more wind. There's no more gusts. There's no more nothing. It just went dead, quiet, just like it was in Michigan when I first had this encounter, and in 2000. Okay. Now this is 2021, and I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all these rock stackings. I mean, there's one, there's two, there's three, there's four, and they're perfectly stacked, but they're like stacked with rocks that you think would just fall over. Like, I don't know how anybody could do it. I don't think I could stack rocks like that. I think I think the way these were stacked, I couldn't get them to be stacked like that. Um, just the fulcrum of, one small rock holding bigger rocks up, without them falling over, and they're perfect, and they're in a semicircle away from each other. They're a pretty good distance away from each other, but they're just all right there. And immediately I'm thinking, oh, no, no, no. I know Sasquatch does this. I know they stack rocks. And these were 2 to 2.5 feet high, maybe 3 feet high. Um, it was just unbelievable. Again, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I just sat there looking at it, and I started to get this creepy feeling because it's dead quiet. There's no wind, nothing. And I get my phone out. I'm like, I'm taking pictures of this. So I start snapping pictures. Well, my girlfriend walks up and she's like, what's going on? I'm like, look at all these rock stackings. She goes, wow. She goes, that's really neat. I said, no, you don't get it. I said, this is Sasquatch. And she's like, Scott, come on, Sasquatch. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I've done research online. Um, I know about a family that had a family of Sasquatches on their property. They used to watch them stack slate rock, real high, in the air, about 3 foot high, and they would gift them, and they would take slate rock and they would stack it and gift them back. I said, I've read all about it. I said that they do this, they stack stuff. And I said, who's going to do this 125 yards off of the trail? Who's going to hoax this? Nobody's going to see this. Who's going to see this? If I wouldn't have walked out there like a ding dong because I want to explore, I would have never even known it was there. I would have never seen it. But who's going to hoax that? I don't know of anybody that would do that. If you're going to hoax something, you're going to hoax something right off the trail or on the trail or next to the trail. If you're going to rock stack and you're going to pretend or try and fake people out, that's what you're going to do. You're not going to do it 125 a football field away and have it in a semicircle. I just said we need to get out of here, because years later, I'm doing all this research and I hear people, they see them crawling like a spider. They see them crawling on their bellies. I think you had one guy on your show that was talking about hunting with his dogs and hunting at night by himself. And he always coon hunted or whatever by himself. And he took a guy out in the woods and saw one crawling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just told my girlfriend, we need to get out of here. And the minute we walked back to the trail, the wind kicked up. It blew my cowboy hat off my head. It was really windy. And I'm like, let's just get out of here. So we got in the car and we drove out and drove back to the hotel. And so, I don't really know what I trust on the BFRO, but I did go on the BFRO and look for that area if there was any sightings or anything. And nobody had reported anything. But once again, people see these things and they don't say anything. They carry it around with them for 20 years before they happen to say something. I didn't even tell anybody for 3 years after my first experience. And then it was quite a few years after that before I said anything or told anybody or told, my best friend or, which he's the guy in Ohio that, well, I've been out in the woods for 15, 16 years and I've never seen one. And I told him today, look, man, just because you have not seen one doesn't mean they don't exist. And that's why I've been coming out and doing podcasts, because I want to get my experiences out and I want to share, because I want people, if they're going hiking in a national forest, or anywhere for that matter, to mind your surroundings and keep your head up. Don't look down at your feet when you're walking. Look around your surroundings, because, I've seen pictures of Scott Carpenter where he's walking with the camera behind him, and there's one in the woods that he took a still picture of looking at him, and he never knew it was there. So, I just tell people, I don't really say Sasquatch, but just mind your surroundings and be careful and watch what you're doing, because I've watched all the 411s with David Politis, and 75% of the people that go missing in these national forests are hunters. They're not people out, taking a walk or camping or hiking. They're hunters, and they just disappear. Like there's no shred of anything. If a mountain lion gets you, you're gonna fight it, even if it grabs onto you. You're gonna fight, or a bobcat, or a cougar, or a black panther, or whatever. Um, you're gonna fight for your life. There's gonna be torn clothes or blood, and when these people go missing, there's nothing. Small children have went missing, and then they go up when they're doing these big search parties. They go up a mountain 3 miles, and there's the kid's shoe. How in the heck did that shoe get up there 3 or 4 miles? That kid didn't walk up there. I can barely walk up some of these mountains, and I'm a grown man. A little kid isn't going to walk. 3, 4-year-old kid, 6, 7-year-old kid is not going to walk 3 miles up a mountain. And then I've seen, some of the documentaries that David's done where they found some of the people and they're completely naked. All their clothes are taken off. They're all found by streams or rivers. I've heard a lot of people see Sasquatch around rivers. I don't know if it's because the river's so noisy and Sasquatches are focused with the water or drinking or whatever, fishing or whatever they're doing, that they don't, I guess they just don't know that you're there. They can't hear you sneak up on them. But I've heard all kinds of experiences from people, and I think that 95% of the people that are telling their experiences are telling the truth. And I think a lot of them don't say anything to anybody for years because they're afraid people are going to mock them, make fun of them, think they're crazy. Oh, yeah, Scott down the street, he had an experience with a Sasquatch. He's a nut. You know what I mean? But I'm in my 50s now, so I really don't care. I really I don't care what people think anymore. I know what I heard. I know what I heard scream at me. Um, you know, I seen the rock stackings, and I think it's all because I picked that damn rock up. And I think if I would have never picked that stone up or whatever, that little rock, I think my friend that's a Native American, I think his belief is right. And a couple of my friends I told, they said, well, you need to drive up to Michigan and go back in that area and throw that rock down on the ground and leave it and go home. And I've thought about it quite a few times because I'm starting to have more and more of these experiences. And, I think that we are their entertainment. They don't have TV to watch. So, you know, they live in such, hard areas that they don't have a lot going on. I think they hunt for their food and all that, but I think we're their entertainment. So, when somebody's fishing and a big rock gets thrown in the water and you kind of see where it come from, but you can't see what's throwing it. I think they're inquisitive and I think they want to see our reactions. I think when whatever it was that threw those two little rocks at me was watching me. And now I find out that a lot of them tree hug and they're on the ground. They're real low to the ground on their bellies, and you're looking up. You're not looking down. You're looking up in the air for them standing up, being so tall. And I've heard of them, like I said, about crawling on their stomachs and crawling like a spider. And I guess I heard a couple people say it's just creepy the way they move. One guy was up in Canada or Alaska, and he was coming out of his friend's house at night to smoke a cigarette, and he saw one in the field walking, and he said it just collapsed. He said it was the weirdest thing. It just collapsed on all fours. Not like really fell. It just kind of collapsed down. And he said it took off running. And he said it was just crazy fast how fast it was. He said he couldn't like wrap his mind around about how fast it was moving. He said it was as fast as a cheetah. So I don't know, man. But that's what's happened to me. Those are my experiences.
Yeah,
I don't.
I appreciate you sharing it all with us.
Yeah,
And
I mean, like
Michigan is notorious.
yeah. See, I
Michigan's
didn't know.
known for activity.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that either in 2000 because I wasn't doing research. I was going to bow hunt. I wanted to deer hunt. You know what I mean? Even when it got up, for a second I thought, well, maybe it's a big buck. But the deer that I've spooked that have been bedding down in places, dude, they're gone. That you hear them running and they sound like a horse galloping. And then when they get down so far and they know you're a predator, they're snorting. They light the woods up, man. They're snorting all over the place. And when it's quiet and a deer snorts, that'll spook you. I mean, it's loud. But this thing got up and it took 5 steps like me in behind me on that 2-track, and it was dead quiet. Like it just stood there. I heard branches breaking as it's walking, and it sounded bipedal. And deer don't do that, man. Deer take off.
What did you think it was initially when it was happening?
To be honest with you, a lot of things ran through my mind, like, did a bear come down here from the UP and migrate down here? I'm having all these animals run through my mind. Well, it's not this, it's not that. I don't have anything like this in here. And then, I'm flashing back on my head. It's bipedal. It's bipedal, Scott. It's walking like you, and it's big, and it's trying to be stealthy. So it can't, because I think its feet were so big, it was stepping all these limbs, that because there's so many limbs on the floor, that it's trying to be quiet and stealthy. So it's got a brain. Like it's trying to be cunning, like it's a chess match now. You move, it's moving. You move, it's moving. It's not going to move until you move.
Why do you think he didn't want you in the area?
I honestly think that it was trying to get away from me. I didn't know anything about their habitat. I didn't know anything about that they sleep on the ground. And then, I did this research and I came across Melba Ketchum. She did the whole genome code on it, opened it wide open, found out that it's part human DNA and the other part is it's female DNA, I believe. And then the other part is not on the record books, dude. It's not any animal on the face of this planet. Now, if you believe in, the Bible and, Nephilim, and that fallen angels came down here and had sex with women, and this is what happened, and they're the abomination of it. If you believe that, you can go with that. But I really think that they're related to Gigantopithecus. That thing was 12 foot, a 12-foot ape that walked bipedal, and it really existed. And it existed, I believe, in Europe. And I believe these things are an offspring of that. And I think that they migrated across the Bering Strait, down through Alaska, British Columbia, Canada, into California, and then they migrated east, Texas, Missouri, where you are, Minnesota, Ohio, and so on, and New York State. And I think they're in little pockets in places that you don't think they would be. And I think they're there, and they're the champion hide and seekers. That's why people don't see them. Even people in Colorado and people out west in Oregon, if you see one, it's because they want you to see them. It's maybe every once in a while you'll come around a bend and one will be standing there because it just happens to be walking across the trail as you're coming down the trail, and it's just coincidence. But most of the time, I think that they want you to see them. And Melba, I guess, had video of one. I saw video of one sleeping on the ground. Its chest was rising up and down. Supposedly, she got this in Kentucky. So I didn't know anything about sleeping on the ground. I don't know if they sleep in caves. Like I said, I'm a bow hunter. I was out to deer hunt, man. I didn't have Bigfoot on my head. When I saw Patty when I was 9 years old, I was thinking, okay, that's out of the Pacific Northwest. I'm not going to be bothered with this. I'm not going to run into anything like this. They're not here. They're not in Ohio where I grew up. Well, evidently they are in Ohio because I'm hearing people that are seeing them. But I really think that I spooked it. It got up. I woke it up. It walked around me. It didn't really, it was trying to be stealthy and cunning, and it wanted to get out of the area. And I think that when it was walking east and I was walking south, the little intervals, and I took off running. I think it thought, okay, this thing's running. I'm going to run, and I'm getting out of here. And I think it took off running and paralleled me a little bit, and then it branched off because we were both going south, and it branched off and went southeast out into the swamp. And I went to my tree, and I talked to a couple other guys on their podcast who have seen them and have had a lot of experience with them. And they said when they get to a tree and they start ripping a tree apart, they're pissed off. That's a sign of domination. That's a sign of, hey, this is my territory. Get the hell out of here. And this thing was ripping this tree. I mean, it was ripping it apart. It
Yeah,
was
it sounded like a
tearing.
big one.
Oh, dude, it was tearing and twisting. Like I said, it sounded to me like it was between 600 to 1,000 pounds because
Mhm.
the thump of the footfall was huge.
Yeah.
And it had to have been between 7 and 9 feet tall. It had to have been,
Yeah.
because it could not be quiet. It was trying to be quiet and stealthy, but couldn't. I could
Mhm.
hear it when it was walking. It was breaking the twigs and the branches at every step it took.
Yeah.
So, it couldn't. But I'll tell you what, I don't want to go through that again. Now, 2021, I walk in the woods in the dark again, like I guess a fool. But um, I told my friend in Ohio, he's like, well, how bad did this affect you? I said, it turned my world upside down. I'm hearing something that supposedly doesn't exist. It's not some guy out there, in my area. Usually, you're in the woods. If you see somebody else, you're like, hey, I'm over here. You don't want to get shot, by another hunter or whatever. So if you see somebody, you're just kind of waving her, hey, I'm over here. Don't, if it's gun season or whatever, don't shoot this way. But when something's quiet and it doesn't say anything, there was no growl, no mind speak, no infrasound, no nothing. It
Mhm.
was just hauling ass and getting out of town. And
Yeah.
I'm glad it did, because like I
Mhm.
said, when I was standing on that trail, man, I thought, you done screwed up here, dude. You should have never shined your flashlight over there, because this thing knows where you are. And if this thing is as big as it sounds, um, it can just come down here and take you, and it's over. I had a bow. I'm in pitch black. I couldn't shoot at it. I wouldn't have been able to see it. I would have heard it coming. But, I like I said, I heard they're crazy fast. You're not going to outrun it. You are
Mhm.
not going to outrun something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Um, I wanted to ask you too. You
sure.
mentioned about how you thought like how they got around the world over time, and ended up in North America. Now, that makes sense, but to me, like if you think about how they got to Australia, nothing explains that one, or if they are in like Hawaii. Isn't that kind of weird?
Well, yeah, I've not heard anything of Hawaii, but I've heard of Australia, and I guess they're called Yowies down there.
Mm.
And I guess they're just as big. But then they've had real small ones in the jungles of Malaysia. I guess they've seen, like, they look like a Sasquatch, but they're only about 4 foot tall. And I can't think of what they're called. But I think they were prominently in, like, Europe and Germany, China, the Himalayas. I think they were mainly prominently over there, in the jungles. I can't really, if they are in Australia, I, I can't
It's
contest
hard
to
to say
that.
how they got there, because
Yeah,
like with people, you can say, oh, they built, boats and they got
yeah.
there over so much time. But with the Sasquatch, it leads me to believe that they've been here the whole time and they've adapted and all over the world.
Well, and if you go back and check history with the Native Americans, they're supposed to have been here over 1,000 years ago, because the Native Americans were trading with them, gifting them, supposedly hunting with them, all kinds of things. And then I heard every once in a while, they would steal a female. Um, I don't know if they wanted to mate with her. I don't know.
Hmm.
Supposedly, and I cannot think. Um, one of them, supposedly a small one, they captured. when they were building the Continental Railroad across the United States, and they had one in a train car, and it was supposed to have been an offspring of a Sasquatch and a female, but I can't think of the name of it. I ran across it one time when I was doing a little research, and they were talking about actually capturing it, but supposedly it got out and got away, and then they caught up to it, and it got sick or something and was dying, and it died. And that was back in the 1800s or something.
Yeah.
So that's a long time ago, man.
Hmm.
1,000 years is a long time ago. But yeah, that's now that I think about it, I never thought about that. I
Hmm.
never thought about them being in Australia if they're there and how they got there. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. It's strange. It makes me
Yeah.
think that they've been here before people. What would make more sense to you now that you've had experiences with the unknown? Do you think a creator put us and the creatures of this planet here and the Sasquatches, or do you think evolution took place? And that's the answer. What makes more sense at this point in history or in time? I mean,
Well, the thing that doesn't make sense to me is, like I said, Melba Ketchum genocoded the blood, and one side of it is female. Okay, so they something mated with a female and created them. So they're
Mhm.
a people. I thought, if here's the weird thing. If you look at Patty, okay, they got genitalia like us. They got, 10 fingers and hands. They got feet. So they got to have some kind of human code DNA in them because they're like us, kind of, except they're a lot bigger. Um, the thing that doesn't make sense to me, though, is, um, you know, how have they been here all this time? And some construction worker that's logging, they're doing logging and stuff. They find footprints. They put a cast and say, "Well, looks like big feet." And then the name took off. Why all of a sudden did they let somebody know they were here? If they've been here this whole time and nobody knew about them because they're living somewhere where man's not went. I mean, if you think about it, there were giant squids that were folklore and in stories, and we all believed, or I guess a lot of us believed, that it was all fairy tales until they found a giant squid that's 39 feet long. Now giant squids actually inhabit the earth because there's what they say 75% of the ocean they haven't even explored yet because it's that vast and that big. So there's areas on this earth where man's not even been yet. I mean, if you go up to British Columbia, and look out at the millions and millions and millions of acres of forest out there that man's not even been through yet. I mean, something like this could inhabit it. There's enough food there that they could eat, no matter if they're eating berries or if they're meat eaters like us. They could inhabit it. It's possible. Look in Tennessee, look in Oregon. It's it's thousands of miles of
so how,
mountain.
how how does that make you feel when you hear scientists and anthropologists say that they couldn't possibly survive on what's out there?
Well, it goes back to what I just said about giant squids. The scientists and people in the community didn't even believe in it until they found one. And the problem is, I really think that the government knows, just like they know about UFOs. Now they're coming out with all this UFO video and everything because they can't contain it anymore. There's so many people videoing it and seeing it, and Sasquatch is the same way. There's so many hundreds or thousands of people that are seeing them, that are finding footprints. Um, Listen, if you go like to Alaska or you go to British Columbia and you go out there and you're walking and you find footprints in the middle of nowhere. Now I'm talking about 200 or 300 miles from the nearest civilization. There's no way a person went out there and hoaxed and put footprints out there because how do you know somebody's going to come along and see it? When you're hundreds and thousands of miles. You know what I'm saying? So if you run across footprints out there, it's pretty possible that something left them. It's just like I saw the video of some guys up on the side of a mountain out in Mount St. Helens, and the guy's just videotaping. and there's a Sasquatch walking. And the guy's like, what is that? And he kind of zooms in as much as he can, and you see a Sasquatch walking through the timber. And it's like, okay, if you wanted to hoax that, you'd have to put somebody in a suit, and it'd have to be a pretty good suit. And you'd have to get a mile away, because these guys were like maybe a mile away, to do that out in the hot sun. Or say you're not hoaxing it, but somebody wants to hoax you, but they don't know you're on the side of that mountain, and you're just going to go out somewhere in the hot summer sun, 90-degree heat, and sit in a suit for 3 or 4 days waiting for somebody to walk by or whatever, out in the middle of nowhere in Mount St. Helens. So I don't believe that. I think scientists need to get a grip and really figure that there can be other things on this earth. Like I said, 75% of the ocean hasn't even been explored. There's all kinds of mountain ranges in British Columbia and Oregon and the Pacific Northwest that man's never stepped into. How do you know what's there if you've never been there? And you can't explore all of it because it's too vast. So
Right.
I believe something with human DNA that stands 7 to 12 feet tall could be walking around in there and inhabiting it. I mean, I'm just telling you, I've watched the Patty video over and over and over and over. Okay. That's not a person in a suit. I watched a documentary with Bob Gimlin. They had the guy on there that said he was the guy in the suit. And he had a gorilla mask or whatever sitting on his lap. He said, "This is what I wore." Okay. I wish I could remember with the documentary, because I tell you, so you could go watch it. But the eyes were like rubber. Okay. And I'm
Yeah, I've
thinking,
seen it.
you seen it?
Yeah.
How do you look out through those rubber eyes and see where the hell you're going? And two, that guy, they said Patty was 6'9", maybe 7'1", something like that. And he's like 5'8". So how in the hell are you, how are you gaining this height and walking? And she isn't even watching. She's not looking down where she's walking. If you wear a suit like that, and then take in all this, that Walt Disney, the guy that worked on the Planet of the Apes, all of them said, we didn't have the technology to build a suit like that. Because when her arm's swinging, you can see her muscle flex. You can see it flex down, and when she cranks her arm back up, you can see it flex. You can see the hematoma on her thigh flex. You can see her muscle in her thigh flex when she steps. When they zoom in on it, you can see it. If
Yeah.
you put a gorilla suit on, if you put any kind of suit on, you're not going to see the muscle underneath your suit move. You're only
Maybe
going to
if
see
it was like in a yard or like in a building like with flat ground, but I feel like how like Patty looked over a few times and
yeah,
how long she was looking over, like a person that was walking on big rocks through
they
a
trip.
yeah, they'd trip. They'd have to put their arms out kind of like you're balancing for a
Yeah.
second, real quick, but it never did that. It was just so fluent.
Well, listen to this. Here's another thing. Most of these Sasquatch, from the footprints, if you look at footprints that people find like on YouTube, they walk pigeon-toed. Their legs never straighten out. They glide. When we walk, we pop up and down. When they walk, they just glide. They don't pop
Yep.
up and down.
We have like the balls of like our feet. They have like a lot more surface area, so like you don't
And
trip or sidestep.
they have that metatarsal thing that bends. Their foot
Mm-hmm.
breaks. So
Yep.
they're walking 1 foot in front of the other. So they're stepping, 1 foot in front of the other as they're gliding along. That's why they're smooth. That's why people have said, they've seen them walking. They just glide. They glide over rocks, whatever. They don't bob up and down. Patty is gliding. She's not bobbing up and down. They've already done the biometric uh, mechanical walk of it. Nobody can do it. That right there tells me that's not a person in a suit, and it ain't that old man, because nobody can walk like him. Then let's do this. Okay. Let's take you. What's your height and weight? If you don't mind me asking.
It's like 5'11", like 185.
Okay. So 5'11", 185. So you're not going to make it by the height because you're not tall enough. Okay. If we put a suit on you, but let's just say that we put you on stilts and now you're 6'9", 7 foot. But now they said she weighed anywhere from 700 to maybe 1,200 pounds. So let's say we'll just put 700 pounds on your shoulders and your back. Now you got to get up. You got to walk in a suit on stilts, or even if you're that tall, you got to walk in a suit. You got to have this shit glued on your face so you can fluently move your head or twist your body to look, and you got 700 pounds. I couldn't even get out of a chair with 700 pounds on my body. I'd have to be helped up. Okay. So even if somebody helps me up, how are you going to walk pigeon toed? You're going to turn and look at Bob Gimlin, who's taking a gun out of his sheath, because he said when he took his gun out, she heard that, and that's when she turned. How are you going to do all that and walk pigeon toed and glide with 700 pounds on you? I couldn't even walk with 200 pounds on my body. I would be hunched over. It would be hard for me to straighten up and carry that weight on my legs and be able to walk through. And they did the castings and the foot impression. I mean, Bob Gimlin jumped off a fallen down tree next to it to try and get his boot imprint next to it to see if he could make the same imprint. Couldn't do it. He took the horse over by it and walked the horse by the footprint, and the horse weighed 1,200 pounds and didn't sink in as much as her. So how are you going to do that if you're a human in a suit? It's impossible. And plus, they haven't found anybody that can walk like her. The biometric of it, the mechanics of it, nobody can walk like her. So you're telling me, people are telling me that's a person in a suit. The scientific community should look at that video, which most of them have, and most of them haven't really commented. I mean, there's been a few that said, nah, that's not real. But there's been a lot of them that said, that's not a human in a suit. That's not a person. You can't do all that and be human. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that tells me pretty much that you're looking at a real Sasquatch. But you get people even people that are hunters, like my best friend from Ohio. I show them that video and some other videos. I got a video from Alaska. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a family out by a lake, and they're shooting video, and they're on a vacation, and there's a Sasquatch bent over, and it stands up, and it's like looking through woods, and it stands up, and I swear to God, at its shoulders is about 5 foot. It's about 5 foot wide, and it takes some steps and walks around the tree and walks kind of through the woods, and you can see it. And dude, I'm telling you, all the experiences I've heard from people that have seen them, their shoulder width is all 4 and 5 feet. They're all wide like that. They say they have huge back muscles, and this thing looks just like it. It looks like a big, huge gorilla from the back walking bipedal on 2 legs. It looks just like Pat. And the other crazy thing, I seen somebody once that took Patty and took all the hair off her face. Okay, off her head and her face from the picture. And you know what it looks like? It looks like a Native American. She's got the hooded nose. A lot of Native Americans have hooded nose. The chin, she looks like a Native American. And that blew my mind, because then I'm wondering, well, maybe, they branched off from Native Americans as if you want to talk about evolution, maybe they branched off. Maybe they were a form of a Native American. I don't know. But I think it's really weird that she looked just like a Native American to me.
Yeah, it could be vice versa. They started off in North America and then ended up in China.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah. And I told Wes Germer that very same thing. And I said, it really struck me that she looked like a Native American to me. She looks just like a Native American. So, but you put all the hair back on her face. But I really, the scientific community, I mean, I've heard about special forces going in, when they have people come up missing in a national forest and they believe that these things are taking people. And I've heard people that were there. They were in the special forces, now retired, and they went in and killed a whole family of them. And then they bring these big helicopters in and they haul them out. So that's why I think the government knows all about them. And if you think about it, look at the spotted owl. The forest industry just about went bankrupt over an owl. Now, if you think for 1 minute that you have, uh, you know, 50, 60, or 100 Sasquatch living in Oregon somewhere in the national forest, if they wrecked the whole thing with the spotted owl and lost all that money, what do you think would happen if you had a family of Bigfoot living in there?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Everything would be shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be shut
I,
down.
I wanted to get back to your encounters or your experiences. Back in Michigan, when you had those rocks thrown at you, and the Native American told you shouldn't have taken that. I think that's strange because when I was on the driveway and I saw one of the juveniles, when I went back the next day and I looked at that spot, where I saw him, I found an arrowhead, and I mean it's a big one. It's like a spear. And
Yeah,
I've looked on this property for years for arrowheads, and I've never found one. Not even like a chip, like where you can
yeah,
see they've been making them. And
yeah.
I picked it up, and now that you said that, I kind of think that's why maybe I had all my encounters and visits because I took that rock. And I mean, it was right there where he was standing, probably about 5 feet in front of him to his right. And I
Huh.
mean, it was a little bit in the dirt. I had to go home and like wash it off a little bit, but it wasn't like buried. It was half out and half in.
It was for you to find it.
Yeah,
It was
and
there
it's
for you to find.
strange. And the
Yeah.
weird thing about that rock is it looks like the Sasquatch I saw. Like the cone-shaped head, like it looks like I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I'll pop it up right now so they can see it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's strange. I'll send you a picture after we get off the phone.
Okay. Because you just saying that gave me goosebumps because I can relate because I picked that stone up. And, then I'm telling my friend, and, my friend's like, wait a minute, man. He shouldn't have picked that stone up. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And he's like, man, my tribe believes if you touch something that they touched, you're connected. And for the rest of your life, you're going to be connected. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord God, and this is before 2015, right? So, now 2015 comes along and I have one scream at me twice. And it's in Indiana, man. I'm not out in the Pacific Northwest. I'm on flat ground. And the thing that really got to me about this is when the second time it wasn't a roar, it was like a yell scream, and it yelled and screamed at me. It echoed. Okay, I'm not in a valley anywhere, but it echoed. When it
Yeah,
stopped, I could hear it again, like it echoed.
it's just
That's
so loud.
Yes, that's how I
Um,
knew it was big.
in the moment, what that Native American told you, when you were experiencing this, were you thinking about him? Was that the first thing you thought about? Like, oh
Um,
man, he was
well,
right.
the first thing I thought about, to be honest with you, when I heard it walking, I flashed back to 2000 because the footsteps was the same thing. They
Yeah.
were loud, repetitive, and sound
You're
like
like,
a
there it is again.
yes.
Like that's the first thing you thought. There it is.
I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. And I wanted so bad for somebody to walk out of the woods and go, hey man, because then I would have said, hey, you need to get off this property because nobody's allowed to hunt there. I'm the only person that's allowed to hunt there because, they don't want anybody else in there. So again, just like in Michigan, I was the only person allowed to bow hunt back there behind the landowner's home. Nobody else was allowed in there. So that's how
You
when it
you
happened.
wanted somebody to say, it's me, but that never
Yeah,
happened, and it just remained quiet, or the
yeah,
sounds kept. They continued.
yes. And you know, your listeners, unless you have an experience like this, you can only imagine the fear. I mean, I can't make anybody understand how scary it is to be by yourself in pitch black darkness. You can't see the hand in front of your face, and you got something moving like this, and it just stops behind you, and it's not moving, and it's not going to move until you move. And when you start moving, it starts moving. And the fear that you have, I mean, I could hardly breathe. because my heart was pumping. I mean, I was surprised you didn't hear my heart pumping in my chest. My heart was pumping. I'm like, what in the heck is this? You know. Now, if I would have done all this research up till 2000, immediately when I got up and it walked, and then it's walking like me after all the people I've heard tell their thing, I would have known right away. Well, I got a Bigfoot in here, and I need to get to my tree and get the hell away from it because I don't know if it's going to snatch me up, but
Now in Michigan, there's a lot of dogman reports.
yeah, I know. I've heard a lot of them too. I never seen a dog man. I hunted around there quite a bit. I never really seen a dog man. I felt a lot more comfortable with a gun, a rifle or a shotgun in my hand versus a bow because you're not going to do anything with a bow with these things. Dog man or not, Sasquatch. A gun, you got a little bit better chance, especially if you shoot one in the head versus the chest.
Yeah,
So,
a bow would be like shooting at a car. Like it just
yeah,
wouldn't do too
I
much.
mean, it's just going to pull it out and break it up and start growling at you and say, okay, now it's on. I'm coming for you. And there's no way out of that, man. You're not getting
Yeah.
out of that one. You know, my
Yeah, and there's deer that have been shot like in the lungs, when they take them to get processed, and they cut them open. They find broadheads in the lungs, and they survive. They were just fine, and that's crazy that an animal can do that.
I've seen a buck hit by a car, and the buck got up and ran in the woods. And 2 weeks later, I seen the same buck, and it never killed it. And it hit it. Didn't break its legs. It rolled up onto the hood, but it got off the car and ran off. And I saw it later on, and it was the same deer in my
Mhm.
area.
Did you ever
And
see this video on YouTube of this bear that gets ran over, and it's like under the car for like 2 hours, and it eventually lifts up the car and gets out of there.
wow, I
Yeah,
never saw that.
it's insane. Like they're in the car and it's like lifting the car up, and they're all freaking out.
Well, I think wild animals have more of a drive to live and survive than we do. If you think about it, they're out in harsh areas. I thought about the whole Sasquatch thing. Okay, well, their feet have to be padded. They have to have thick pads on their feet, almost like leather. Because how are they going to walk? People in Minnesota are finding footprints out in the middle of nowhere, and they go so far and go up a mountain and they just stop. I can't explain that. I don't know about this whole porthole thing that Scott Carpenter talks about. I don't know about that. But I'm thinking, how do they not get frostbite? You can't walk out when it's 20 degrees out barefoot. I mean, you can for a few minutes in the snow or whatever, but you're going to get back in the house. You're not
Now,
going to keep walking.
yeah, I agree. How does that make you feel that the Bigfoots seem to be more natural to this planet than humans? We don't
Well,
we don't seem to belong here. Like if we go out in the woods, we get tested, and we quickly get ran out by the cold or rain, the sleet. But Bigfoots, they're made for it. So they seem to be more from this planet than us. Like it kind of seems like we don't belong here.
right. Well, and the other thing is when we go in the woods, we've evolved to be smart enough, to be cunning enough to develop weapons to kill animals. I mean, look at the Native Americans. They had wooden bows and wooden arrows, but they honed everything to the point where they could kill a bison or whatever. And I don't know what they were pulling back in those days. I pull back 60 pounds on my bow. I don't know what your bow is. I can pull 70, 75, but I like to hunt with 60 because when it gets cold out, I've had 70-pound bows, and you see a deer and you haven't pulled it back, you can't hardly pull it back. You can't draw it back. So I'm
Yeah,
thinking maybe
it's happened to me.
40-pound longbow, maybe you're going to pull back and release, and that's killing bison. So I think we've evolved that way to put us in nature to be able to do the things we do. But I totally agree with you. Um, because of where they are in life and where they live, um, I think they've evolved, or whatever put them here, or how they got here. Um, they were evolved to be able to live out in harsh conditions, or in caves, or sleep on the ground. But I always thought that, like, how do you not get frostbite on your fingers? I know you have all this thick hair. You probably have a heavy coat. You're probably you probably burn a lot of calories walking around, so you got to eat a lot. But I always wondered about the footprints when people find them in the snow, and one has walked through their backyard, and every time it's pigeon-toed, it's 1 foot in front of the other. They've never found one where the feet are right next to each other like ours. 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. It's always 1 foot in front of the other, and it's big, massive feet, but they're walking in, 5, 6 inches of snow. How do their toes not get frostbitten? Who equipped them with that to do that?
Mm.
That's what blows my mind. It's like, if these
Yeah.
things, really exist, and I believe they exist, I'm a believer. I'm a knower because of the experience I've had and what I heard. And I tell my friends, I know what I heard. Your eyesight will play tricks on you. Did I really see what I just thought I saw? Was that you got to focus your eyes? But let me tell you something, your hearing doesn't play tricks on you. You hear, I truly believe you hear what you hear. That's it. You don't
Mm.
hear something and go, oh, well, did I hear that? What was that? I mean, not the stuff I heard. When I hear something hit a tree and it's so loud that it sounds like whatever they hit the tree with just exploded around the tree. You can't mistake that. You can't say, oh, well, somebody's out in their backyard hitting a tree with a baseball bat. Okay, well, why are they hitting a tree with a baseball bat? What's the point of that?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that?
Right.
I look at a lot of this with common sense, like you know, the way Patty walks. Nobody's been able to walk like that. So how can it be a human? It can't be a human. There's no way. You can't prove it to me that that's a human. Like I said, why are you going to take a baseball bat and hit your tree, and do something like that? Why
Yeah.
why is something going to throw a rock at me? If that was a human, they'd pop out from around a tree and laugh at you, and then I'd go, whoo, you
Yeah.
know,
Not a smart thing to be doing at 7 in the morning during
yeah,
deer season.
yeah, you'll get shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, Scott. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I think that wraps up everything. You did such a great job at explaining everything, but this isn't your first rodeo, so I'm really glad you got in contact with me and wanted to be on the show.
Well, and it's been a lot of years since, because like every time I tell this, I'm right there. I get
Hmm.
goosebumps, and I'm right there all over again because it was such a profound moment in my life. There's a lot of my family that still doesn't know about it. I haven't told a lot of my immediate family, because I didn't want my family to think I went bonkers. I did tell my youngest sister about the Michigan thing. I didn't tell her anything else, and she just looked at me like she just had a blank stare on her face. And I'm like, I'm not lying to you. It's what happened. I can't get around it. It's changed my life. So now when I walk in the woods in the dark, I hear anything, I stop and I'm flashing a flashlight. I don't care if it's a deer. I'm minding my surroundings. Like I'm keyed up when I go into an area, um, to really watch what I'm doing after this, because it turned my world upside down. It probably turned your world upside down. See, you actually seen them.
Hmm.
So it's hard to stand there and look at something that supposedly you're told doesn't exist, or if you see the Patty film on TV and people in your family go, oh, that's poppycock, that isn't real, that's somebody in a suit walking, and you're sitting there thinking, I've seen 2 of them in behind my house. you know um they're real. I've seen them. you
Yeah,
know
exactly.
and why is somebody going to come around your house and hoax you? You know what I mean? Why?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Even if somebody hoaxed you and fooled you, you know how come nobody's ringing your doorbell and saying, hey man, I was the guy in the Bigfoot outfit behind your house? Anybody rang your doorbell?
No.
Exactly, Miguel. Right
Yeah.
on.
I don't think they ever will.
No, I don't think they will either, but
They'll just slap the side of my house, but
have they slapped the side of your house?
yeah, a few times.
Oh my god, man.
Yeah, that dang rock. I need to go chuck it out in the the woods.
You need,
No.
yeah, you need to take it back out there because I got to drive 6 hours to the place where it happened for me. I got to take a 6 hour hike, but it's right behind your house. I'd be standing in your yard just throwing that right back in the woods, man.
I'm gonna take it hunting with me. See if that big buck comes out. I'll just see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah, but
Or
what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do if that? How tall was the big one you saw? How tall do you think it was?
anywhere from like 6 to 7 foot. I saw it at a distance, and I'm used to seeing people. So
Yeah.
originally, I thought it was around 6.5, but I went back there and kind of looked around, and it was a little taller than what I thought.
How far away was it?
Probably about 30, 40 yards.
Wow,
Yeah, it was right there.
that's nothing. That's close.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
it
that was
just
close.
it just stood up and looked at you and just walked into the woods.
Oh yeah, yeah, just like the Patty film, just like that, except it disappeared into, the Missouri oak trees.
Wow, because I've heard of a lot of people from Missouri seeing them. A lot of podcasts. It's a lot of people. Up in a tree stand and they see one come out of the woods 700 yards away, and as soon as it gets out of the woods, it takes a few steps and it turns, and the guy's looking through his rifle through the scope at it, and it turns and looks right at him, almost
Yeah.
like they have this sixth sense that they know that people are there.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, and there's people that wear regular clothes and still get shot during hunting season. You know what I mean? So
right,
I don't
right.
know. It's a weird thing. Like I would not be wearing a monkey suit walking around the woods at
No,
7 in the morning when it's
no.
20 degrees outside.
How are you going to see to walk in it? It's
Yeah.
you can't see. It's not like you just walking out in your clothes and walking around. You got something over your face, and all you got is two little holes to look out through it. You can't see everything. You can't see where you're walking. You know what I mean? You just trip and fall. But that's
You,
amazing that you actually seen them. That blows my mind. Do you hunt the woods behind your house?
yeah, I still hunt there. Yeah, I get activity. I got a whoop, kind of like what you were explaining, like that build up, like
Yeah,
the tornado siren kind of sound. Yeah, it was like that, kind of like how Kerry Arnold described the whoop he heard.
yeah, yeah. He said his was more like it was telling him, don't touch that gun, because he said he slid his hand up the gun and got a hold of the stock, and the thing turned at him and got like an aggressive posture and went almost like a no, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But
Um,
that loud buildup that he explained, though, whoop, pow, like that loud whip crack sound. I don't know how to explain it, but that's how this whoop was. It just started off, and I thought it was an owl screaming, and then it just like it was long, and like the let off of it was just loud, like a sonic boom. When a sonic boom happens, it's just like,
yeah,
dang, that
yeah,
it
it
shook
almost hurts your
everything.
ears.
Yeah,
It, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's how it was. That's how it was over at my girlfriend's mom dad's property. It was like like that.
yeah, yeah.
And it got loud, man. I got goosebumps doing that. But it was that's the other thing. You can't, unless you hear it, you can't make people understand,
Yeah,
like,
the last part's like lightning striking. It's just like,
yeah,
dang.
the infrasound, the feel of it, it's like so much pressure in the air that this big thing is doing. And I knew after the second one, I knew what was standing on the inside of that woods. I knew it. And that's why I took off running. I'm like, I'm out of here, man. You
Hmm.
don't need to yell at me a third time, and you
Yeah,
don't need to come out here after me. I'm getting out of here. Because I think a lot of times that's why they do it. They're letting you know, hey, I'm the big predator in this woods, and I want you out of here. I don't want
yeah.
you in here. You know?
And like a bobcat or a fox, that'll freak you out. But when you hear this, it's just
Yeah,
10 times that and unknown, so it makes it 100 times worse.
yeah. A bobcat is like a whiny. They got like a whiny pitch to them, like
Yeah,
a like that.
they can
But
do
this,
that little exorcist scream, or like a woman screaming. But the
yeah,
Bigfoot screaming is so much more different.
Like, it's different. You can hear the power behind it.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. And that's why, I wish I could get my friend. I wish my friend would have been with me, so he at least could have heard it. Because he's on the fence with it. He's like, well, I got to see one. And I'm like, well, you may never see one. You know what I mean? Or you could go out some morning in the dark and run into one somewhere. So,
It's like winning the lottery. You never know.
yeah, yeah, and it's when you least expect it. That's what I said. I mean, I really think that when somebody sees one, it's because they're letting you see them. It's not because you're going to see them. It's because they're letting you see them. They're letting you know that I live here and I'm around, and you need to tread softly. Because I think that there's, I think they're a lot like people, and that's why there's so many different ones, and they look different. They all don't look the same. Some of them don't have the cone-shaped head or the convex head. From some of the reports I've heard from people, some of them have real long hair like an orangutan. They all look different, and I think they're like us. There are nice people that'll help you, and there are people that don't want to be messed with, and there are evil people. And I think it's the same way for them. There are ones that'll just walk past you and look at you and keep on walking and disappear. And then there's ones that will walk next to you in the dark and push you out of the woods because they don't want you on their territory. And then there's just ones that are evil that will come after you. And they'll either take you or, these people, disappearing. I think they're running into one that, is like, I've had it. You people are all in here in my territory and I'm done. And now I'm going to take you. And I think that's what's happening. So,
yeah, I mean, when it comes to Bigfoots, I mean, some, could be like Brad Pitt and some will be like Shaq, and they both look completely different, but yet they both eat, they both do the same things and have the same tendencies, but one's super athletic compared to the other one. You know what I mean? It can do things that are beyond human belief in a way, and I think that's how the Sasquatches are. Some are just so much more in tune. Some can do strange things when it comes to the spiritual world, and some are just supernatural. I mean,
some of them
really natural.
Freeze. People have frozen and they can't move.
Yeah.
And after the experience, the people get sick, like they want to throw up. They get nauseated. They can't hardly walk. They're a little dizzy. I didn't really have that. Yes. But I heard, I talked to Wes Germer before I got on his show, and we talked for about an hour and a half on the phone, and he told me about his experience up in the mountains with his brother, and they had a juvenile that was up in the tree, and they were trying to figure out what the heck it was, and then this big one come down out of the mountain, down right in front of the car, and there was a 5-foot embankment down to the road, and he said this thing just took a step off of it, like, it was nothing. Like,
Do you
it was
think
nothing.
they did something that made those two Sasquatches so angry?
Well, he said that he thought that they were coming down to go to the river to fish because there's a big river down there, and there's been quite a few people that have seen them. And he said that they were coming down at night in the dark because the one was behind their car growling at them, a real guttural growl, and was getting closer and closer. And then he said the big one came out in front of them, and I said, "What'd he do? Did he get down like a runner?" He said, "Yes, that's exactly what he did. He got down on like one leg, like a sprinter, and put his shoulder down and pulled his arm up and took off right towards him like a bluff charge. And then it would stop, and then it would walk back, and then it walked back and forth across the dirt road in front of them, and then it would get down like a runner again, pull its arm up, and take off running at their car and stop." And he said, then this other one came down off the little 5-foot embankment. And he said it was a lot thinner. It was more athletic looking, like a athletic, runner, runs marathons. He said it was real skinny, was kind of lanky, it had real long arms. But he said the one that was bluff charging was huge. It was 4.5 to 5 feet at the shoulders. It was just It was about 8. I think he said 8.5, 9 feet tall. Now, could you imagine sitting in your car seeing that?
Yeah, that'd be intense.
I'd be like, get me out of here, man. That's
Yeah.
what time do they slap your house? Is it on one night out of the week, the same night?
Just random times, and it'd be the strangest times of the day. It could be when it was dark, like around 11 p.m. And then one time it was like 3 in the evening. It was a sunny day, and just something slapped the house. But at this point, I didn't know they slapped houses.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I started hearing stories, and I was like, well, that's what it is, because I'd already seen them at this point, but I was thinking, this is paranormal stuff. This is ghost activity, because like, I don't know, when the slapping was going on, I'd hear things in the house moving, like kind of like if you drop like a ball on the ground or something hit inside the house, and this was like in the basement. So
wow,
I was kind of putting that activity to the paranormal stuff, but then I started hearing they slapped the houses, and I was like, shoot, I just saw one like 3 weeks ago, so that's more likely what it is.
Yeah. I heard one guy, I think he's up in Alaska, and he owns some property and he lives in town, but he calls it his shack, but he's having a lot of problems with them. And they come up and throw rocks, little pebbles on his roof, because he's got a tin roof, and they throw rocks, and they'll hit the side of his shack, and he said they hit it so hard that his pictures fall off the wall. Now, let me tell you something. If I'm sitting, when you're inside of a place and something hits the side of your house that hard, it's a lot louder on the inside, I believe, than the outside, because all the sound expands. You're outside, but that sound's coming through your house. I can just imagine how terrorizing that is. That would freak me out.
Yeah.
And I mean, do they do it all the time? Is it sporadic? Is it like once a month? I mean, what is it?
I mean, for me, they just did it for like, I don't know, like a 2-week period, and then they never did it again.
Wow.
They always do something different, or I find something different, like something like a new structure. Just, it's never the same,
Yeah, trying to keep you on your toes, because they probably know you're out looking.
But then when I go to a new area and I find the same stuff, I know what to expect or what to look for. So it does help me. But just if I stick to one area, it's like a never-ending rabbit hole.
Yeah. I was trying to think what I was going to ask you here real quick, before we get off here.
Going deer hunting?
No, that's not for a couple of weeks yet. And I think I'm going to go to Ohio for the first week and hunt with my buddy that's on the fence with Bigfoot. But I was going to ask you something about, do they throw rocks at your house?
I've never experienced rock throwing. Not yet.
Yeah. Well, it's probably coming.
Yeah, probably.
You better get ready for it, because you may be sitting in your stand and get hit in the leg or whatever with a rock.
Yeah, infrasound and mind speak. So I'm just waiting for those.
Yeah.
I've got it all pretty much under my belt. Just kidding.
Well, and I believe you. And the thing of it is, I think if I would have kept hunting in that woods in Michigan, because like I said, I didn't know that Michigan's a hot spot for Sasquatch. I didn't know anything about it when this happened. I didn't know anything about any of it. But I really think that them throwing rock at me and hitting me on my way out of the woods, I think they were letting me know that you're not just hearing stuff, like, we're really here. And I think they were getting close to, they were going to show themselves to me. I really think that. I think I was one step away from it. I think them throwing the stone was the breaking moment, like, okay, hey, we're here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They were testing your reactions every time, I believe.
Because you have been watched out there. They've probably been watching you. I don't know how long you've lived there, but they've probably been watching you since you first got there, and you just didn't know it. They've probably been watching you hunting, because this is what they do.
Oh, I used to play out there as a kid and make little structures and little forts when me and my brothers were younger.
Yeah.
And I've hunted it ever since.
That's what I'm saying. They've probably been watching you for years, and they probably decided, well, hey, we're going to show you that we're here. We're real, and that we're really here. And you need to mind what you're doing. You know what I mean? And I don't know, if you get a deer out there, leave the internals out there, and, maybe I've heard of them taking them, I've heard of them eating it. So
Oh
I
yeah,
don't,
I'll be there at 5:30 in the morning. So
yeah, that,
find
that's,
out.
that's scary walking in the woods where you've seen one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a little hairy for me. I don't know if I'd be, but you don't know where you go and hunt down there. I mean, I don't know what the terrain is like where you live. I don't know if it's a lot of foliage and a lot of woods and forests, or if it's block timber, if you got block timber behind your house, or if it goes on for a long ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of forest. There's houses around though. I mean,
Yeah.
town's probably 5 minutes away, but
Has anybody else came up to you and said, "Hey, I had this weird stuff going on around my house," you know?
um, I I I want to say yes that people have experienced things because somebody up the road after I had my encounters about a month after that they put like one of those big Bigfoot cutouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, right off in their yard. But I mean, no, I haven't thought about asking anybody because the people on this road are very sketchy. Very
Yeah.
sketchy people, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know where you're getting.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you any more questions because this is your show. But I'm fascinated with people that have actually seen them,
Mm.
and their motor skills and what they do, and I know a lot of people I've heard, they don't hang around very long. Like they get up and move. Or one guy said he thought one was a stump and it stood up, and it just turned around and it looked at him and looked him up and down, and then it just turned around and walked away.
Hmm.
So it's, it blows my mind that, you've seen one and seen a juvenile. And I think you said the juvenile took off running or whatever. And it was like fast and just disappeared.
Hmm. Now, if they are spiritual, and every single person that's seen one or experienced it, what do you think the significance behind it is for that individual at the time?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know either, and I think about it every day because
Yeah.
there's got to be a reason to it, because I don't know, like many skeptics, the people that don't believe have said, like if this is real, why hasn't a body come up, or someone just smashed one with a car, but I
Yeah.
think there is like an element to it that we don't understand.
Well, and I think the people part of them, the people DNA, I think they bury their dead just like we do.
Mm.
And the body will disintegrate in the ground very fast. If you take a deer and leave it, in the summertime, it disintegrates really, really fast
It
from
has
the
to,
inside out. Yeah.
because like how many houses have been built, and they take bulldozers in there, you'd think you'd get a skull or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, all these giant skulls that they're finding,
Yeah.
people are being very misled, I believe, because how can we say that's ancient or unknown when there's all these encounters with Bigfoot and they're not the same? That's the strange thing behind it. In one family group of Bigfoot, you'll see one that had a round head, and then a month later they seen one that has a cone-shaped head, and they look completely different.
Yeah. And it's just like we all don't look alike either. We're all human, and we have the same fingers, hands, toes, whatever, but we all look different.
Yeah,
We're
but the Samuel family, they should all look identical. The brothers and sisters. Some should at least like have
Yeah.
certain traits that match up to that family group. But these family groups, you know what I'm talking about, like these skulls are like what you'd see in Egypt. Like
Yeah.
elongated and not like head binding. That's a different thing. What they do in tribes, and they put
Right.
that around their head.
Yeah. Do
That's
that.
just something different. Like this is natural. Their
Genetic.
brains are, yeah, they're giant. Like they have giant brains.
Yeah, and like I said too, the whole special forces going in and killing a family because they're taking people, and the park system, says, hey, this is drawing a lot of attention to the park. We need to get a hold of the government, have them come in and wipe this family out of Bigfoot. And, that's why I know the government knows, because they've taken them. They already know. They've already seen them. I read where when Mount St. Helens blew up. I don't know how old you were when that happened. But Mount St. Helens blew up. The government came in to clean everything up, and get everything organized. And there was 4 or 5 people there when a truck pulled up, semi, and it had a trailer, a flatbed, and a cover over it. And there's a hairy hand sticking out of the cover. And a guy said on his deathbed, I saw it. I was told not to say anything. I think the government has known about this since the 50s and 60s. When they first found the footprints, I think the government knew about it. But again, the Park Service is not going to say anything, and the government's not going to say anything, because they don't want the Park Service to lose millions and millions and millions of dollars, because people are going to stop going there. Yeah, you're going to have nutcakes that are going to go in there and see if they can hunt a Bigfoot or find a Bigfoot or whatever. But for the most part, families are not going to go in there and hike, or they're not going to camp out. They're going to stay home or whatever. So the Park Service is going to lose millions and millions of dollars. And I think that's why they don't say anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, how would you feel going down a trail that says "Beware Bigfoots" or "Danger Bigfoot area"? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I want to walk down that trail anymore. Even if you thought you were cool with it, when you're there by yourself and it gets dark and the reality sets in, no way.
Yeah, most people aren't going to do it. They're going to go, I'm getting out of here. The sun's going down, and and then, like I said, I think it would be a domino effect. A lot of people wouldn't go, and the Park Service would lose a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. So, when David Paulides started doing these 411 things, he couldn't believe how many people actually go missing every year that the Park Service doesn't even say anything about.
Yeah, that's why they don't keep a report. They don't want people looking. They don't want people raising eyebrows, being like, "What's going on here?" So that's probably the real reason.
Yeah, and if you went there and they had a page printout on the side of a wall of 200 people so far this year that went missing, are you going to walk in there? You're not going to go in there. Why are all these people missing?
Yeah, with no answers.
Lost. Yeah, and they won't give you answers. When I went out to Colorado, I went way up in the mountains, and I saw a Park Service ranger or Park Forest ranger, and I was talking to her, and there's a guy out there that has a it's a Bigfoot museum, and he's got I'll have to send you some stuff, pictures that he took way up in the mountains in the wintertime. He found Bigfoot tracks and documented them, and he's got some pictures of Sasquatch. And I said to her, so come on, where's Sasquatch at around here? I'm like, she just kind of stood there quiet, and I said, you can tell me. It's just you and me standing here. I'm not recording anything. How many Sasquatch are seen by people here? Have you seen one? And she just smiled at me and walked away. So I took it as, I know they exist, but I'm not going to say nothing to you. So,
maybe it made her feel better that somebody said that. Now she knows she can't say anything; she'll lose her job. But when you said that, it kind of set in, and made her feel better.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. Because I told my girlfriend after we got in the car,
this guy's smart.
Yeah, and I said she knows that they're here. She's probably seen one even, but she knows that they're here, and she can't say anything, because if she was to say something to me, and then I went to her supervisor and said, hey, I talked to one of your park rangers and she said there's Sasquatch here, she's going to lose her job. You know what I mean? They're going to get rid of her. So, because they don't want any attention to it, They'd
probably relocate her, and then she'd lose her job.
Yeah, because I drove some places around the mountain where there were some bends in the roads and big, tall trees. I mean, big, tall trees. And it just looks so rugged. And as I'm doing that, I just imagine in my mind of an 8-foot Sasquatch walking down across the road, and down into the other part of the ravine and just disappearing. Like it looked so perfect for it. You know what I mean? Like I could see it happening, but it never happened. So
If you think it's a good area, it might be.
yeah. But I, like I said in the beginning of all this, if I'm driving down the road at 75 mile an hour and one steps up by the road and is standing there, I'm good with it. That's a good day. I'm going to clap and go, I knew it. I knew all along. I knew it. And that's great. But do I want to be in a tree stand and one walks out in front of me and it's looking up at me, or I'm walking down the trail and one's walking towards me, or, cause you're like, at that point, you're like, look, this might be part human, but it's also wild. And I don't know what it's going to do. And I don't know if it's going to do something to me. I think that's the scary part of it with them is you don't know what they're going to do. They're not domesticated. They're not driving a car somewhere and they're not home fixing food or watching football. They're living out in harsh conditions and they're having to kill deer, run them down. I've even heard them killing elk and grabbing, the antlers on an elk and twisting their head and breaking their neck. I don't know if it's real. I never seen it, but I heard somebody witness it, and he sounded pretty credible when he was telling what he witnessed it.
Every single person that tells an account could be a person that could have possibly been on the 411, missing 411. You know what I mean? Because it's like the classic experience. Something's trailing you. It's making these sounds. It's bluff charging you. It's not maybe that they're not just playing with you, that they're possibly seriously getting ready to do something.
Yeah, like take you.
Mm-hmm. They're trying to like build up the courage to do it.
Yeah. Because I think some of them are a little shy. They're just like us. Some of them are a little shy. That's why they hide behind trees or they rock back and forth. I think a lot of them are inquisitive. They don't have television.
Or they're laughing. When they do it, they could be laughing and having a good time, and it's like positive. You know what I mean? Or it could be very bad. Most likely not good.
Yeah, when they're, like I said, when I got the rocks thrown at me, and the thing I couldn't wrap my mind around the most was it almost hit me in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm walking, I'm moving, I'm not stationary. I can throw something at something twice and get it kind of close if it's stationary. I can't do it all the time, but I could probably do it out of 50 throws. But I'm moving and something's doing this and hitting me solid in the back. And the second one was real close. The first one was kind of a tap. That's why I was like, what the heck? I was like, what the heck? But the second one was a little harder. It stung a little bit. So it was thrown with a little bit more volume.
Yeah, see, yours they have a more serious personality, or at least that individual that you encountered. The ones that I encountered, like they're really kind. They'll joke around, kind of like whistling at me, or they'll leave me like mushrooms, or if I gift them and leave them like fish, they'll leave me 2 fish and take 2. Or if I leave them like, I don't know, 6 apples, they'll leave 2 or 3. Which, if it's a raccoon, you'd see like shredded pieces and they won't leave anything, or the deer.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
They've even brought me back the basket, which is crazy because I don't know, that tells me that they wanted more. I'd put all the gifts in a little basket out there where I deer hunt, and just all summer long, I'm going out there every day and checking it and just trying to see if I experience anything. But no, they don't do that. They don't like trail me in the woods. If I'm in a spot they don't want me to be in, like I hear the thumps or I'll get that whoop, but that's like very rare, you know what I mean? And I hadn't been in the woods in a long time and I snuck up on them, but they don't try to like chase me out. But yeah, other groups, man, they'll let you know it for sure.
Yeah. That's why I think the screens that I got, because that woods isn't really big, and I really think that's a migration place for whatever it is. It's coming through there. I think it was going to walk through there and walk across the field and on to the next place because I heard that they go over 25 miles hunting. They'll walk. You know, if they're hunting, you know, with 2 or 3 or whatever, they go long distances. And I think it was just a migration alley through there, and I happened to be there when it was there.
Yeah,
And
okay. So think about this. What if you know, before you get there, probably about 10 minutes before you get to that spot, um 2 or 3 Sasquatches cross, you know, like maybe a mother and like a juvenile and a little one. Well,
right,
about 10 minutes later, you get to that exact same spot. Now he's coming down that same trail, but he's wanting to stay with his group, but now he's got you right in the middle of his group
between them.
and the rest of them. Yeah. So they're trying to like figure out like, okay, should you guys come back or should I join you? This guy's in the way, you know.
Yeah, and I'm gonna scream really loud and scare the hell out of him, and he's gonna run. And
Yeah, and he's
that's
probably wondering if they know that you're there, you know. He's trying to let them know, like, hey.
yeah, and I think too, like I just told you, I think I know I was being watched in Michigan. From the time I first came there and started hunting and put my stand up, I think they were watching me. And I think they were like, oh, well, you know, here's another one of them, you know what I mean, that's going to do what they do with whatever they have to kill a deer or whatever, you know what I mean? I don't know if they're smart enough to know that, you know, I think they're smart enough to know when you have a gun in your hands that that's dangerous. And
Mm-hmm.
because I think they've been shot at enough that they know.
Well,
Um,
have you ever heard of that guy? He was a surfer and he got attacked by a shark. Well, he finally got better and went out and started surfing again. And he got attacked by a shark again. Well,
wow.
it ended up happening a third time. Well, scientists ended up saying that his body puts off more electric, like current or more electricity. I don't know how they explained it, but more than regular people, that when he goes out there, the sharks are more in tune with him and immediately notice him.
Wow.
And it could be the same thing with Sasquatches. You know, maybe they're not just like connected with certain people because they're nice or whatever. Maybe certain people put off like a different frequency.
Yeah. Or maybe certain people pick up rocks that are thrown at them. They're connected to them. I
Yeah.
don't know, man. Hey, let me ask you before we get off here and end this, because I really want to know what you think about one person that's supposedly in the field and he's trying to get Sasquatch protected. And I think you know who I'm talking about. His first name's Todd, and he's up in British Columbia, and he takes people up there to have Sasquatch experiences. You know, he had that thing on Netflix where he filmed a Sasquatch standing in the dark because he had night gear on, and he got, I guess, a big log thrown at him or whatever. But he's the one that's got the head of the Sasquatch that I don't know if he calls it Louie or Charlie. I don't know what he calls it, but it's kind of in the woods, and it
Mhm.
kind of blinks, kind of weird. And Joe Rogan was saying it's fake, and then he's got the other pictures of the other Sasquatch family, and they look totally different, and their hair's all matted. Have you seen that?
Mhm. Yeah.
What
Yeah,
do
it's
you
hard to say.
What do you
Uh,
think?
I mean, personally, there, I think it's pretty good footage and some good pictures. Um, I think there are some, I don't know, some areas that need more attention, you know, that are kind of sketchy. But
Yeah,
it's hard to say because even if you did see one or you filmed one, everybody's gonna say you didn't, you know, or at least most people
it's
are.
fake, or it's
Yeah,
fake. It's a
yeah,
man in a suit because he's got the one video of one running up the mountain. Have you seen that?
yeah. I've seen them all, and I
He's
mean the
kind of
videos.
lanky, like people reported seeing.
Mhm. I
I,
just think the videos that people have made to disprove them are pretty poor themselves. So it's really hard to say, you know.
yeah, and most of them are really bad gorilla suits. These
Hmm.
are, you know, these look like they just don't look like a suit to me. And the whole motor mechanic of how they're moving, you couldn't do that in a suit. There's just
Yeah.
no way.
And when
And
it
the one,
comes down to it, we're all trying to prove the same thing, so it's hard to like bash someone, you know. No, I'm right about Sasquatch and he's wrong. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I'm not bashing.
No, no.
Person. I just want to know what you think because you've actually really
Yeah.
seen them.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I mean?
I think it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of dumb to, try to petition to protect these things because they don't need a protection.
No.
And the truth is, there's a lot more forest than people even think is out there. You go to the woods a lot. There's a lot of forest out there, and there's a lot of places to hide.
Right.
And
go ahead. Sorry.
I just think people should, if they're going up there to petition, it should be why we aren't being told, not, let's protect these things. It should be, let's get down to the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think if the government or even Jeff Meldrum or guys that pretty much think that they're real, if they would just come out and go, look, let's try and find them and at least try and study them if we can, and let's instead of waiting for somebody to shoot one or bring a head in or whatever, to say.
I think it looks worse that you're afraid of like losing your reputation. Like it looks like you don't believe in it. Like you don't fully believe in it. Like you're skeptical still.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if you saw something, you shouldn't be worried about your job. You should know that no matter what happens, life's going to provide, or you'll move on. You'll find a way. But you shouldn't feel trapped. Like, oh, I have to do this because I need food on the table. Like if you know something is real, you should stand behind it 110%.
Right. And why would you want to work for somewhere that would do that to you anyways?
Exactly. That's not real. You know what I mean? If you're working for somebody like that and you have to lie all the time, that's not real. It's not healthy for you.
And the other thing is too, there's some people out there that are saying they're gorillas or monkeys or and that's one thing. You asked me about the whole scientific thing. I don't think they're monkeys or gorillas. I think they're a people. They're a race of people. That's why they have the human genome code, the human side. I don't know what the other side is, but I think that they just have a large amount of hair in their body and they're human. They just walk differently than us.
Animalistic humans.
Yes, and they're spiritual, like you said, but so are Native Americans. Look how spiritual Native Americans are.
And they've been here longer, so their intelligence and the way they've adapted to nature and even their spirituality is much more advanced than ours.
Right. Because they've been here longer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you said, they're adaptable. So they're put here to adapt to so many more things than what we are. We're conventional, a conventional race. We live in houses. We can speak. Although I heard they have a language. It sounds like samurai or whatever, chatter. But I'm sure they have a language, a vocabulary too.
They have multiple languages. I mean, I think they communicate, by talking back and forth. They do animal sounds. They do Morse code with knocking, just everything they do is communication.
Rocks, whistling. I've heard that. I've heard
they stink. You can smell them,
Yeah.
That's communication there.
But here's the other thing. The two that I had an experience with, I smelled nothing. No stink. I heard when they get riled up, they put off a pheromone that stinks really bad. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what some people have said, and that's why sometimes you smell. Did you smell the ones that you saw?
No, but I mean, like going up there every day for weeks and months later, like I would smell like stale urine smells or like urine with vinegar or like a skunky vinegar urine smell. If that makes any sense. Just in like one spot, like I'd walk and it'd hit me. And then I'd walk and it'd be gone. But it was always at that same spot. Then I started realizing, smell the tree. So like I smelled the tree where I kept getting hit by this stench, and it was the tree. And it's about 5 feet up, and it just smells like a urine spot on the tree about 5 feet up. So I don't know. It could be another animal, maybe a raccoon peed down the tree, but it's strong.
So did you see any genitalia when you saw them?
No, I was more focused like on its face and like on its back muscles and like the way it was walking. But it was kind of quartering. I don't know, like it was walking to my left and quartering away from me.
Yeah. Now, did you immediately run to your left to try and keep seeing it, or did you just stand there in awe?
I just stood there till it disappeared, and then once it disappeared, and I never really heard it walking, like it didn't make a sound. So I was like, did I really see that? And like it was just like this battle in my mind. So like I ran where I was going, which was back to the house, and I cut across the yard and cut back into the woods, and then I could hear him again. He was in there huffing like a horse, and I was like, okay.
Oh, really? He was
Yeah.
huffing.
Yeah, and I mean it was loud. I mean it sounded like a grizzly bear was in there. So I
Wow.
knew that was him because that's the way he was going, and I was trying to follow him. It was a mess, but I got my answer, and that confirmed it for me. And I kind of wrestled in my mind for a couple of weeks, like, did I really see that? Then I saw the juvenile, and that, like, seeing the juvenile really, like, cleared everything up for me, because when I saw the first one, everything was broken in my mind.
Right.
Everything was confusing, but when I saw that juvenile, it seemed to, like, I don't know, like, repaired my mind.
How big was that?
He was probably like 4.5 feet tall.
Wow. And he was just there by himself, or do you think the big one was somewhere in the woods?
I mean, I'm sure they were all around, but like where he was hanging out at, he was by himself. Like in that general area. Now, like 50 yards into the woods where I can't see past all the foliage, there could have been more, but all around me where I could see, it was just him. And that's the weird thing. He was hanging out right next to the driveway. Probably just watching us. Yeah, when I got whistled, they were right there at the driveway. So it's like they watch us come home, and just whoever goes in the woods, they're always watching. So if you think they're in the deepest parts, or you have to go to Canada or the Pacific Northwest, like, no, if there's woods, they can be in there.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're living in there. It means they were there.
Right.
Who knows where they come from?
And did the juvenile sway back and forth or anything, or it just stood there?
No, like when I first saw him, like he was like on all fours, and he was like moving through the brush, like the oak trees, and I couldn't really see much. It just looked like a black blob moving through the woods. I thought it was like turkeys or something. And then when he got up to the oak tree, like he slowly, like in slow, like super slow motion, like hid behind the tree, and all I saw was like a big black arm go behind the tree, and I was like, what the heck was that? And I can't see anything at this point, just the woods. And he just hops out, just steps out to his left, and he's looking to his left, and he doesn't turn his neck like to look, he turns his whole body.
Right.
And like when he sees me, his eyes get huge, like, oh crap, I just got caught. And then he shoots down cartoon fast, like cartoon speed. He shot down like that, and like the little brush next to the big white oak was like swaying back and forth when he did that, and he was gone. Like there was no noise. I was looking to the left and the right of the tree, and I couldn't see him. He was just gone. It's crazy.
That's amazing. That is
middle of the day, 90-degree day, barely any wind. Like when the wind would pick up, it would feel good. You know what I mean? But it wasn't like strong. So like, I mean,
and how do you wrap your mind? How do you wrap your mind around that?
Yeah, especially how big his head was. Like, I don't know, like above his eyes, the conical shaped head like went like 1.5 feet.
Wow.
Like, it was massive head.
So he's probably going to end up being huge when he gets full grown.
Yeah, I think he was a little baby male, and it was so cool seeing that. Like, it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And that's what I kept saying too when I saw him. I kept saying it over and over. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, my God.
Yeah.
My God, they are real is what I said. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, you go most of your life, and we're bow hunters or deer hunters, and we're in the woods. I mean, I'd been in the woods a long time. I never ran across anything like this. And I went in all kinds of places in the dark with a little flashlight, got set up, and daylight came and I hunted or hunted in the evening. I walked out in the dark. Nothing. I never had anything. And then 2000 rolls around. I have this experience. It scared the living hell out of me. And you just come down to a point where, well, either I go back in the woods or I sell all my stuff right now and I don't ever go back in the woods. But the main thing is that thing's still there, or however many are there, and they're there no matter what I do. So it's like, I just said to myself, I'm not letting these things push me out of something I love doing. Either I coexist with them, or something's going to happen. But that's why I'm still hunting today, because I have such a passion for it. Like, what I'm talking about, and I love doing it, and I look forward to it every year. And the camaraderie you have if you hunt with friends, you just sidestep that whole issue. And if something happens, you got to deal with it in the moment, I guess, or you're just never going to hunt again, and you're going to be pushed out. But like I said, this is my 31st year that's going to be starting, and I'm going to be heading back out into the woods in the dark. And it's like, I'm not going to stop doing it.
Yeah. And what people need to understand is, just because you like to kill big bucks doesn't mean that you like to see animals hurt or get, be in pain. Like, that means now that you appreciate nature more. Like, if you see a fawn and she's got her legs stuck in the fence, you're going to go help her. If you see deer that don't have enough water or minerals, like, you're going to go make sure they got that,
Yeah, my girlfriend and I, last winter, when season was about over, I got pictures. We were feeding 15 or 20 deer apples every night, leaving for them in the snow. And my girlfriend was cutting the apples up for them. I'm like, man, they can eat. Nobody cuts apples in the wild form when they're eating apples off a tree or ones that have fallen on the ground. You don't need. I don't care. I'm cutting these apples up for them.
Yeah, gets the scent out a little quicker.
Yeah, and they would come in and we'd watch them. We'd turn the lights off out in our rec room here, and we'd sit on the couch and watch them come in and eat. And they'd walk through the yard and up past the house, between the houses, and and I had them coming in for quite a few nights. And I pass up a lot of deer behind my house because I got a lot of big bucks back there, and it's it's very challenging, and I'm trying to get one. So you let a lot of deer walk by, but and I have a few coyotes back there as well. So but I just love hunting, and it's fun, and I just made up my mind a long time ago. I'm a Taurus. So Tauruses are stubborn people, and it's like I'm not giving ground to this, and I'm not going to be ran out of the woods by something that's 7 or 8 or 9 foot tall. I'm just not going to do it. So I'm going to hang in there and keep going. But I think it's cool that you've seen them, and I think that's awesome. And I don't know if I really want to do that. I guess from a distance it would be okay if they're just looking at me and they just turn and walk away or run away or whatever. Or if I'm decide to leave them some fish and they take the fish or leave me fish, that's all cool. But I wouldn't want to run into one that's evil or mean, or one that doesn't want you in that woods. You know what I mean? And one that's going to come at you or in the dark or, whatever. I wouldn't want that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think throwing rocks and smacking your house and all that is just to get your attention. You know what I mean? I think the one, whatever threw the rock at me was to get my attention. Hey, we don't want you to leave. Hey, we're over here. We're not going to show you yet, but we're over here, and we want you to know that we're here. The whoops, the tree knocks, whatever, we want you to know we're here. And yours, did you get slaps on your house or anything like that before you seen them, or you seen them first and then that happened?
Yeah, I seen them and then that happened.
Okay. Well, then they're just reminding you, hey, we're here. We need some fish or whatever. We're going to slap your house, and tomorrow.
Give me back that rock.
Yeah. Yeah. Why'd you take that rock, man? I want it. So,
I mean, I'm joking right now, but seriously, like, it makes me wonder, because, when you hear stories about like the paranormal and somebody took like an item from that paranormal house,
yeah,
like
it's gonna
the activity, yeah, it followed them,
Definitely.
And you hear things about Bigfoot being paranormal, and you hear people saying, no matter where I go, I get activity.
Yeah.
So it's strange.
My friend tried to tell me, he's like, that guy's in trouble. And he's like, he's going to have another run in. They're going to find him, And then, I have that happen. And then I go out to Vegas and I sent you the pictures of the rock stackings. And I personally could not have done that. There's no way. I'm not gifted enough of a person to know which rock to stack with what, and 3 foot high in the air without it falling over or whatever. I mean, that was just there, and I took pictures and we got out of there because it creeped me out when the wind all died down and there was no wind and there's 25-mile-an-hour gusts and then there's nothing. That scared me. That was a creepy moment, you know. And then I walk in and I see all these rock stackings, and I read where this family used to watch them do it, and that's a characteristic of what they do. And that tells me that there's more than one there because there's 4 or 5 rock stackings, unless one did all of them. But I didn't stick around to find out. We just backed out, and I'm glad I took the pictures, and like I said, I sent them to you so you could see them. So I think it's cool in the moment, but it's a little hair raising. It's a little scary. It's a little like, how did this get here? And who's doing this out clear out here? I could see if it was close to where we were on the trail or whatever. You walk up on one, okay, maybe somebody did this. Maybe somebody came through here and just, stack this and they want people to see it or whatever. But when you go way out off the beating path and you not only see one, but you see 2, you see 3, you see 4, that's some kind of a message or something is the way I take it. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I was in holy ground for them, or I don't know why they stack rocks because nobody's ever asked them. But I don't know. It's just creepy. It creeps me out. Ever since 2000, I get this edgy, creepy feeling, and I was always told if you feel a certain way in your gut and it's bad, you need to leave. I've heard of people. I got this feeling, and I just felt like this gut feeling of it's something ain't right, and I got the hell out of there. And that's the feeling I got. It's like I told my girlfriend we need to get out of here. So
yeah, I agree. All right, you heard it, everybody. If you're getting that feeling out in the woods, something's up.
get out.
That's right. All right, Scott. Well,
all right, man.
Yeah, I think that wraps up everything, and yeah, I appreciate you being on the show.
Well, I appreciate you letting me come on, and I'm glad to have met you, and I hope that we can be friends and maybe keep contacting or texting each other. Maybe you can get a picture of one of these things, or maybe sometime I can come down to your neck of woods and we'll hunt a little bit, and maybe we'll see one together. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think all those things are possible, and yeah, I'd be excited for that.
Yeah, I'm just hoping you can run faster than me, because otherwise it's gonna get you.
Yeah,
I can run pretty fast still for an old guy. So if you can't run fast for me, buddy, and it's coming, you're in trouble.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
You could.
All right. Well, I'll have some questions for you. I'm on a few big bucks, and they've tricked me so far. So I'm sure I'll be messaging you.
Okay, that's cool. I'll look forward to it because I got some big bucks on the wall. So
okay, yeah, that'd be great. And
I don't know how long
forward to it.
Or whatever been out in the woods, but
yeah,
I've been doing it a pretty long time. So
okay,
you just gotta be sneakier than they are. A lot of big bucks are sneaky. I've seen them crawl on their stomachs. So during gun season, not to be shot. So they're willy, sneaky beasts, man.
Mm-hmm. They are.
I've seen them in a CRP field because I hunt a big one in Ohio, and I've literally been in a stand and seen hunters come through, big 12 point, laying down in that cattails. CRP field is.
Yeah.
They're real tall cattails, and it's really thick to walk through. And I've seen a big buck lay there, and 6, 7 guys walk right by it. Never see it. And that deer let them walk all by 200 yards away, and then it gets up and walks the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
They do that especially too. Like if they get shot, you won't even know they're right there.
Mm-mm. No. So you gotta, sometimes you can outfox them a little bit or do like I do and you wait till the rut and everything's thrown up in the air. They don't listen. They don't smell. You crack some horns and they're coming to you like a dog ringing a dinner bell. It is coming to you. So, or the first part of October before they know you're there. If you can sneak in and out and they don't know you're there, you get a good shot. But each day that goes by and they know, they start to figure out, hey, there's a predator in here. Then they start changing their patterns. They start moving at different times. And then you got to change your patterns. And
you got one day mainly. You got 3 days the most. After that, you better switch up your spot.
Yeah. You got to be in there. And, I know this ain't the hunting channel, but I've never really hunted from like 11 to 1. I did it once. I saw a small buck behind my house, but I've never, they say big bucks move between like 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock is when they mainly move. But when the rut's on, they're moving all day and all night.
Oh,
That's, you might have a big buck in your area and you don't see him for 3.5 weeks because he's 5 miles away or 3 miles away in another woods, locked down with a doe, and he's out of your area. So, you just don't see him. So that's just how it is. But you'll get it figured out. And, you'll have to send me some pictures of something big you get this year. Hopefully something SASQUATCH or anything.
Yeah, I know.
All right, man. It was nice talking to you. And thanks for letting me come on your show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad to have you on.
All right, thanks.
All right, you have a good night, sir.
You too. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
I think it's really cool that Scott has taken it upon himself to acknowledge the reality of what is happening on our planet and share his experiences with many other people. I hope he continues to share his experiences and will utilize the forest when he feels the need. It can be very unhealthy for a person to have such an experience and not have anyone to talk to about it without getting laughed at. Scott continues to bow hunt till this day, but is much more wary of what could be coming down a game trail or what may be hiding around the next bend. I think it is important for people to understand that not all Sasquatch are out to harm us, but there are those who do not wish to be disturbed and they will run you out of an area. For the most part, the Bigfoot, in my opinion, are very tolerable of humans and they do have a deeper understanding of our behavior than we do of theirs, if that makes any sense. If a person could gather anything from this story, it would be to respect nature and to understand we are not at the top of the food chain on this planet, and just be aware of your surroundings. Anyways, that's all we have for today, and I will see you guys next time.